Hello and welcome, traveler. Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable and let the outside world fade. What you'll hear is more than history or myth. It is something older and deeper. If you enjoy it, leave a like, subscribe, and share where you're listening from. Wherever we are, we gather together beneath the same stars. Now, let us step back before our world was shaped by science, before written history, before kingdoms and empires, to a time when people sat around fires, their faces lit by flickering flames, and whispered the stories of gods, monsters, and heroes. A time when the line between the real and the imagined was thinner than smoke. The story of Greek mythology is not just a collection of strange tales about jealous gods and impossible creatures. It is the complete memory of an ancient people trying to understand life, death, nature, and the human heart. These myths were not entertainment in the way we think of stories today. They were explanations, warnings, lessons, and sometimes even the fragile thread that kept a community together. At the beginning, there was nothing. Or rather, there was chaos. A word the Greeks used not for disorder, but for the yawning void, the endless gap before all things. From chaos came Gaia, the earth itself, and with her the first shapes of creation, sky, night, sea, desire. Each was not merely a concept, but a being, alive, powerful, demanding respect. To the Greeks, every force in the world had a face. Every storm had a personality. Every shadow had intention. Imagine for a moment the fear and wonder of that worldview. To hear thunder and know it was not just the cracking of the sky, but the voice of Zeus, angry above the clouds. To feel the sea tugging at your ship and know it was not chance, but Poseidon's restless hand. To bury the dead and believe they were walking, right now, into the dim kingdom of Hades, where every soul must one day go. This is the veil of myth, a world where nothing happens by accident, and every event is part of a greater drama between gods and mortals. But Greek mythology is also deeply human. It reflects jealousy, ambition, passion, love, grief, and vengeance. The gods, for all their power, are mirrors of us, imperfect, emotional, and often cruel. The heroes are bold but fragile, the monsters terrifying but sometimes pitiful. These stories endured because they spoke to something we all recognize, that life is a struggle, filled with triumphs and failures, and no one, not even a god, escapes consequence. In the chapters ahead, we will walk through the entire cycle of Greek mythology, from the first gods and their violent wars, to the rise of Zeus and the Olympians, from the punishments of Prometheus and Pandora, to the long echoes of Heracles, Perseus, and Odysseus. We will sit at the banquet of gods, and we will descend into the underworld. We will see how myth shaped Greek religion, art, and theatre, and how, even today, those ancient stories are still alive in our psychology and culture. And as we move through these tales, remember, mythology is not just about the past. It is about us, about how humans, thousands of years ago, asked the same questions we still ask today. Why are we here? What forces guide us? What lies beyond death? So let us begin. The fire is lit, the night is deep, and the old voices are waiting to be heard. Welcome to the complete story of Greek mythology. Chapter 1. In the beginning, chaos, Gaia, and the first gods. The story of Greek mythology does not open with light. It begins, instead, in silence, in emptiness so vast that even silence seems too small a word. The Greeks called it chaos. When we say chaos today, we imagine confusion, noise, disorder. But for the ancient Greeks, chaos meant the gap, the yawning void before creation itself. It was not a place. It was the absence of place, a darkness where even time had not yet found its rhythm. From this void, the first shapes of existence stirred, not gods as we might think of them now, but essences given form. The first to emerge was Gaia, the earth. Imagine her not as mere soil or stone, but as a living presence, the ground beneath every footstep, the womb from which mountains and rivers would one day rise. Gaia was not alone for long. From chaos also came Nyx, the night, and Erebus, the deep darkness. Desire itself appeared, in the shape of Eros, not the mischievous cherub of later stories, but a primal force of attraction, a necessity for creation to unfold. And Gaia, in her solitude, gave birth to Uranus, the sky. When he stretched over her, the first union of earth and sky began, and with it the cycle of life. From Gaia and Uranus came the first generation of beings, the Titans, the Cyclopes, and the Hecatoncheires, the 100-handed giants. But here lies the first tragedy of creation. Uranus, horrified by the power of his own children, feared them. He forced them back into Gaia's depths, into the womb of the earth itself, burying them where they could not rise. Gaia groaned with pain, her body stretched and tormented by the children trapped within her. The first struggle between parent and child was already set in motion. Gaia, suffering yet cunning, fashioned a plan. From flint she shaped a sickle and gave it to her youngest son, Cronus, one of the Titans. "Free your brothers and avenge me," she whispered. And Cronus, ambitious and unafraid, obeyed. When Uranus descended again to lie with Gaia, Cronus leapt from the shadows. With one strike he severed his father, and the sky itself recoiled in agony. The blood of Uranus fell onto the earth, and from it sprang the Furies, spirits of vengeance, the giants, fierce and towering, and the Melee, nymphs of the ash tree. From the severed flesh cast into the sea, foam rose up, and out of it would one day emerge Aphrodite, goddess of love. Cronus now ruled in his father's place. The age of the Titans had begun. It is tempting to see this tale as simply grotesque, a myth of blood and betrayal. But the Greeks understood it differently. To them, it explained the natural order of the world, that creation is never peaceful, but born out of struggle, that children surpass their parents, just as new generations overthrow the old. Cronus himself, though victorious, was haunted by prophecy. From the bloodied lips of Uranus came a warning. You too will be overthrown by your own child. Fear rooted itself in Cronus's heart, and so he acted with cruelty to prevent the fate he dreaded. When he took his sister Rhea as his queen, and she bore him children, Cronus devoured them whole. One by one, the infant gods were swallowed. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. Each child entered his stomach, trapped in darkness, silent, unable to grow. Cronus ruled unchallenged, or so he thought. But Rhea, grief-stricken, could not bear to lose another. When her sixth child was born, she devised a deception. She swaddled a stone in cloth and handed it to Cronus, who swallowed it without question. The true child she hid away, carrying him across sea and mountain to the island of Crete. There, in a hidden cave, the infant was raised in secret, his cries masked by the clash of cymbals and the beating of drums. This child was Zeus. We should pause here, because these myths are more than stories of gods. They are reflections of how the ancient Greeks understood their world. The struggles of Gaia and Uranus speak to the eternal tension between earth and sky, between fertility and barrenness. The rise of Cronus mirrors the fear of generational conflict. the way sons replace fathers, and how power is never secure. Even the cannibalism of Cronus has meaning. To the Greeks, it symbolized time itself, for Chronos in Greek sounds like Cronus, devouring everything born into it. Nothing escapes the jaws of time. Every life, no matter how bright, is eventually swallowed, and yet, within that devouring, there is always resistance. The hidden child, the spark of rebellion, the hope of renewal. This theme would echo again and again in Greek myth, that no tyranny lasts forever, and that fate always finds a way. As Zeus grew, nourished by goat's milk and honey, he became strong, cunning, and determined. When the time was right, he returned to confront his father. With the help of Metis, a goddess of wisdom, Zeus tricked Cronus into drinking a potion that forced him to vomit up the swallowed children. One by one, the gods emerged, fully grown, reborn into the world. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. United, they joined Zeus in rebellion. This was the dawn of the greatest war myth had ever known, the Titanomachy. For 10 years, the Olympians and their allies fought against the Titans, the old gods of power and primal force. The battles shook the heavens, the mountains, the seas. Lightning clashed with stone, and the cries of giants echoed across the cosmos. Zeus, with his thunderbolt, struck terror into his enemies. Poseidon wielded his trident, splitting the ground and stirring the oceans. Hades, dark and silent, commanded unseen shadows. At last, the Olympians triumphed. The Titans were hurled into Tartarus, a pit deeper than the abyss, where chains bound them for eternity. The new order of the cosmos had been established. The Olympian gods now reigned. But even this victory did not erase the pattern. For just as Uranus fell to Cronus, and Cronus to Zeus, so too would whispers of prophecy follow the Olympians. Power in Greek mythology is never safe. It is always borrowed, always at risk of loss. And so the first chapter of mythology closes, not with peace but with uneasy triumph. The cosmos had been shaped, earth and sky, night and sea, gods and mortals. But beneath it all, the cycle of rebellion and downfall continued, like a shadow stretching from the dawn of time. To the ancient Greeks, these stories were not fantasies. They were truths, dressed in metaphor, as real as the sun rising each morning. For them, the world itself was born of violence, and to live within it was to accept both its beauty and its terror. In the beginning, there was chaos. From chaos, Gaia. From Gaia, Uranus. From their struggle, the Titans. From blood and fear, Zeus and the Olympians. And from Zeus, the world as the Greeks would know it. Yet even now, we should remember, nothing in these myths is final. Every triumph contains the seed of downfall. Every god holds the shadow of mortality. And every beginning is haunted by the echo of an end. Chapter 2. The Fall of Uranus and the Rise of the Titans. If the birth of Gaia and Uranus set the stage for existence itself, their conflict gave the cosmos its first taste of blood. The Greeks imagined the sky not as empty air, but as a living presence, heavy and suffocating, pressing down on the earth. Uranus, though the father of creation, soon became its tyrant, and in his cruelty, we find the first lesson of Greek mythology. Even the gods are flawed, and power almost always invites fear. When Gaia gave life to her children, the Titans, the Cyclops, and the 100-handed ones, she expected them to rise and take their place upon the earth. But Uranus looked upon them with disgust. The Cyclops had one blazing eye, fierce and unyielding. The 100-handed ones, each with 50 heads and 100 arms, were creatures of unimaginable force. To Uranus, They were abominations, reminders that creation does not bend to perfection. He forced them back into Gaia's womb, burying them in the earth's dark caverns. The ancient poets describe Gaia's agony not as metaphor, but as physical torment. Mountains heaved, rivers burst. The very crust of the world groaned with the weight of children trapped inside. She was mother and prison both. And so, she turned her pain into fury. It was then that Gaia fashioned a weapon, a sickle of unbreakable flint. Its curved blade was designed not for war, but for betrayal. She called upon her children, the Titans, urging them to strike against their father. Yet fear silenced most of them. Only the youngest, Cronus, dared to step forward. On a night when Uranus descended upon Gaia, the trap was sprung. Cronus, hidden in shadow, seized the sickle and struck. With one violent sweep, he castrated his father, severing the sky from the earth in a wound that would never heal. Uranus's scream echoed across the void, shaking even chaos itself. His blood fell upon the ground, and from it rose strange and terrible beings. The Erinyes, the Furies, spirits of vengeance, the Gigantes, giants of rage and strength, and the Meliae, ash-tree nymphs destined to raise warriors. But the sea also claimed its share of Uranus's broken body. From the foam that gathered around his severed flesh arose a figure of astonishing beauty, Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Her birth, springing from violence, was the Greeks' reminder that desire and beauty often emerge from pain. Cronus stood victorious, the bloodied sickle in hand. The age of Uranus was over. The age of the Titans had begun. Yet victory brought no peace. From his wound, Uranus gave voice to a curse. You too, my son, will be overthrown by your child. This prophecy, like a shadow, clung to Cronus and twisted his rule. The Titans were not monsters. In Greek myth, they were the primal forces of the world, older and grander than the gods who would later replace them. Oceanus governed the endless waters that circled the earth. Hyperion carried the light of the heavens. Themis, embodiment of divine order, would one day guide even Zeus. And Mnemosyne, memory itself, would become the mother of the Muses. For a time, the Titans reigned in harmony. Cronus and his sister wife Rhea became king and queen. The earth flourished, rivers flowed freely, harvests were plentiful. Later poets would call this the Golden Age, a time when men lived without toil, without war, without sorrow. It was a dream of what life could be before ambition, greed, and fear corrupted it. But the shadow of prophecy haunted Cronus. His father's warning poisoned his heart with paranoia. When Rhea bore him children, Cronus could not forget Uranus's words. The cycle of overthrow was destiny, and so he devised a monstrous solution. He would swallow his children whole, consuming them before they could ever rise against him. The scene is one of mythology's most haunting. Imagine the throne of Cronus, the Titan king, vast and cold. One by one, Rhea brought forth her children: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. One by one, Cronus took the newborns into his hands and opened his jaws. Each child slid into his gullet, swallowed whole, imprisoned in his stomach, alive but silenced. No cries echoed from his belly, just the dull weight of life suppressed. Rhea, stricken with grief, bore witness to this horror. What is motherhood when every child is stolen? Desperation bred cunning, and in that cunning lay the seed of resistance. When her sixth child was born, Rhea fled to the island of Crete. In a hidden cave on Mount Ida, she gave birth to Zeus. To protect him, she wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and presented it to Cronus. The Titan, blind with fear, swallowed the stone without question. Zeus was hidden away, nursed by the goat Amalthea, guarded by the Curetes, warriors who clashed their shields and spears to drown out his cries. In secret, the child grew, strong, clever, destined for vengeance. The story of Uranus's fall and the rise of Cronus is more than divine family drama. To the Greeks, it explained the eternal cycle of generations. Just as fathers fear their sons and kings fear their heirs, power always breeds paranoia. Cronus's cruelty was not simply villainy, but inevitability. He was trapped by fate, just as Uranus had been, just as Zeus himself one day would be. In every telling of this myth, one truth resounds: no throne is safe. Cronus's rule marked the reign of the Titans, but his fear ensured it would not last. The children he swallowed would not remain lost forever. Zeus would grow, would return, would force Cronus to release his siblings, and together they would rise in rebellion. The Titanomachy, a war that shook the foundations of the universe. But before the Olympians, before the thunderbolt, before the war, there was this moment, a son striking down his father and a father cursing his son. The Greeks understood it not just as myth, but as a reflection of the world they lived in. A world where power is always temporary, where creation demands sacrifice, and where even the gods cannot escape the cycle of time. The sky still arches over the earth, but the wound between Uranus and Gaia never closed. It is the eternal gap between heaven and ground, the scar of the first rebellion. And in that scar, the Titans ruled, for a time. Chapter 3, the Titanomachy, Zeus versus the Old Order. If the rise of the Titans marked a golden yet fragile age, the Titanomachy was its violent end. The cosmos trembled as Zeus, hidden away from his father Cronus, prepared to challenge the very rulers who had devoured his siblings. This was not merely a war of gods against gods. It was a battle between generations, between order and chaos, between fear and courage. The Greeks imagined it as the ultimate clash, where lightning could tear mountains, and the ocean itself could rise against the land. Zeus had grown in secret on the island of Crete, nurtured by Amalthea the goat, and protected by the Curetes, whose clanging shields masked his cries. From these humble beginnings, he emerged as a being of immense strength and intelligence. He was no mere infant god. He was the embodiment of rebellion, cunning, and the inevitability of change. When Rhea revealed to him his true heritage, Zeus understood the enormity of his task: to free his siblings from the belly of Cronus and to overthrow the Titans themselves. The rescue was as dramatic as the myths describe. With the help of Metis, the Titaness of wisdom, Zeus devised a potion that would force Cronus to disgorge his swallowed children. One by one, the gods of the next generation returned to the light: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. The reunion was not joyful. It was electric with anticipation and wrath. These children had been betrayed at birth, and now they were armed with the knowledge of their father's cruelty. Alliances formed swiftly. The Olympians, though smaller in number, found support in those Titans who had opposed Cronus or feared his tyranny. The Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones, once imprisoned beneath the earth by Uranus and Cronus, now joined Zeus, lending their brute strength and elemental power. The Cyclopes forged thunderbolts for Zeus, tridents for Poseidon, and a helmet of invisibility for Hades. The weaponry itself became legendary, for it combined divine craft with raw elemental force. The stage was set. On one side, the old order, Cronus and the Titans, mighty and ancient, ruling from the heights of Olympus and the depths of the earth. On the other, the insurgent Olympians, young, determined, and fueled by both vengeance and destiny. The battles of the Titanomachy were as cataclysmic as the poets imagined. Mountains shattered under the weight of gods, oceans rose like living walls, and the sky itself was torn by lightning. Zeus hurled thunderbolts with precision and fury, while Poseidon commanded the seas to swallow entire battalions. Hades unleashed spirits from the underworld, sowing terror among the Titans. Every strike, every clash of divine power reshaped the world. The myths speak of specific duels. Hyperion, Titan of the sun, faced Helios's light channeled through Zeus's wrath. Oceanus, master of waters, was met with Poseidon's trident, causing tidal waves that reshaped coastlines. The very earth shook, for the 100-handed ones hurled boulders that split mountains. And yet, even amid chaos, the Olympians' unity gave them an edge the Titans could not anticipate. It was not just power that determined victory. Strategy, cunning, and morality, the human-like qualities of the gods, played a decisive role. Zeus's leadership was inspired by both fear and hope. Unlike Cronus, who ruled through paranoia and tyranny, Zeus united allies with promises of justice and liberation. The Titanomachy was, in this sense, a story of revolution, the oppressed rising against their oppressors, the old being replaced by the new, and the inevitability of change woven into the very fabric of myth. The turning point came when the Titans were finally overpowered and cast into Tartarus, the deep abyss beneath the earth. Guarded by the 100-handed ones imprisoned forever, the old order fell into shadow. Yet the Greeks never imagined this as absolute triumph. Even in victory, there were echoes of the old chaos. The Titans' legacy, immense strength, primordial power, and ancient knowledge, lingered in the world, reminding mortals and gods alike that the cosmos was never entirely stable. In the aftermath, Zeus and his siblings established the new order, Olympus. It was a palace not just of stone and marble, but of cosmic authority. Zeus assumed the role of king, wielding thunder and lightning, while Poseidon ruled the seas, Hades the underworld, and the other gods managed realms reflecting their nature and temperament. Yet this peace was fragile. The memory of betrayal, the fear of uprising, and the shadow of prophecy meant that Olympus, like the Titan reign before it, was a kingdom on the edge of potential chaos. The Titanomachy carries lessons beyond myth. It reflects the Greek understanding of history and human experience, that generational conflict is inevitable, that revolutions are violent yet necessary, and that power is a force that must be both respected and challenged. It explains why even gods are not infallible, why even kings face the consequences of ambition and fear. This chapter, more than any other, emphasizes the timeless tension between order and chaos, between youth and age, between rebellion and tyranny. Through the epic battles, the myths convey that no reign, no matter how powerful, can endure without justice, unity, and respect for the forces, both natural and divine, that govern existence. Chapter 4. The Age of the Olympians. With the Titans defeated and cast into the abyss of Tartarus, a new era dawned for the cosmos, the Age of the Olympians. This period, celebrated in countless myths and epic poems, was more than a mere succession of rulers. It was the consolidation of divine authority, the establishment of cosmic order, and the birth of a world shaped by gods who reflected both human virtues and flaws. At the center of this transformation stood Zeus, the newly anointed king of gods. He was no longer the hidden infant of Crete. He was a figure of immense power, commanding lightning and storms, yet tempered by wisdom and foresight. Olympus, the divine palace atop a remote and unassailable mountain, became both a home and a symbol of order. Its halls shimmered with golden light, its columns carved with scenes of past wars and triumphs, a constant reminder of the Titanomachy and the cost of power. Zeus's rule, however, was not solitary. His siblings, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, each carved domains reflecting their essence. Poseidon, god of the seas, controlled oceans, rivers, and storms, wielding his trident to command waters and shape coastlines. Hades, lord of the underworld, presided over the dead, balancing justice and punishment, while Demeter nurtured the earth and its fertility, ensuring the cycles of life and harvest continued. Hestia, quiet yet essential, guarded the hearth and home, embodying stability in the ever-changing world of gods and men. Hera, both queen and formidable goddess of marriage, watched over mortal bonds with a stern yet protective gaze. This distribution of power created a pantheon that was both harmonious and tension-filled, for each deity carried ambitions and desires that could clash. The age of the Olympians was thus not a serene era of peace, but a dynamic period where divine personalities interacted with mortal affairs, sometimes benevolently, often destructively. One of the most defining aspects of this age was the relationship between gods and mortals. Unlike the Titans, who ruled with distant power, the Olympians engaged with humans, for better or worse. Myths abound with stories of Zeus descending in disguise, testing virtue or punishing hubris, of Athena offering wisdom to heroes, of Apollo granting prophecy, and of Dionysus introducing ecstasy, chaos, and revelry. The age of the Olympians was a period when divine intervention shaped mortal destiny, yet humans retained the freedom to act, to err, and to achieve glory. The gods' personalities were deeply intertwined with human experience. Zeus's justice could be as harsh as it was protective. Hera's vigilance could nurture or punish. Poseidon's temper could bring prosperity through calm seas or destruction through storms. These divine interactions underscored a central theme of Greek mythology, that power, responsibility, and consequence were universal, extending from gods to mortals alike. The Olympians also faced internal challenges. Rivalries simmered beneath the surface, creating tension that often erupted into stories of intrigue, vengeance, and cautionary tales. Zeus's numerous affairs provoked Hera's wrath, resulting in a chain of events that impacted both gods and humans. Athena and Ares, embodiments of wisdom and war, frequently clashed over mortal conflicts, reflecting the broader tension between intellect and brute force. Even within the pantheon, the lessons of the Titanomachy, that unchecked ambition leads to downfall, remained ever present. A significant achievement of this age was the codification of divine domains and responsibilities. Each god sphere was clearly defined, not merely as a narrative convenience, but as a reflection of Greek understanding of the world. Apollo presided over the sun, music, and prophecy, while Artemis commanded the moon and the wilds. Hermes facilitated communication, travel, and trade, acting as a bridge between mortals and the divine. This structuring allowed myths to evolve with clarity. Human actions could be interpreted through the lens of divine influence, and the cosmos appeared orderly yet vibrant, a universe teeming with purposeful energy. The age of the Olympians was also marked by heroic interaction. Mortals such as Heracles, Perseus, and Theseus embarked on epic journeys, often guided or obstructed by gods. These narratives showcase the blend of divine oversight and human agency, emphasizing themes of courage, cleverness, and endurance. heroes were not merely pawns. They embodied mortal potential elevated by divine interaction. Every victory, defeat, and quest illustrated the intimate and often unpredictable relationship between gods and men, reinforcing the age of the Olympians as a dynamic and morally complex epoch. Myths of this age also explore moral and ethical questions. The gods themselves were not infallible. They displayed jealousy, passion, and sometimes cruelty. Yet these imperfections served as mirrors for human behavior, teaching lessons through divine example. Justice, hubris, loyalty, and cunning were recurring motifs, explored in stories where the line between triumph and tragedy was often perilously thin. In this sense, the age of the Olympians provided a moral framework, offering guidance and cautionary insight through narrative rather than decree. Another hallmark of the period was the expansion of Greek cultural identity. The gods' domains, myths, and interactions shaped the way Greeks understood their environment, seasons, and social order. Agricultural cycles were tied to Demeter's favor. Storms and seas were navigated with Poseidon's temper in mind. Cities were founded and protected under Athena's wisdom. Religious festivals, rituals, and offerings reinforced these connections, making the age of the Olympians not only a mythic era, but a lived reality, blending the divine with daily existence. Yet, even as order was established, the age was never entirely peaceful. Prophecies of future struggles, the memory of the Titans, and the gods' own passions ensured that Olympus remained a place of tension as well as power. Conflict was not only external, it was woven into the very fabric of divine society. These stories served to remind mortals and gods alike that authority must be exercised wisely, and that the consequences of ambition, jealousy, or neglect could be catastrophic. The age of the Olympians, therefore, was a period of consolidation, creativity, and complexity. It was an era where divine power became structured, yet remained unpredictable, where mortals could interact with the gods yet retain agency, where morality, heroism, and cosmic order intertwined. The myths of this age capture both grandeur and intimacy, presenting a universe that is alive, responsive, and morally resonant. In sum, the age of the Olympians was not merely a chronological epoch, but a mythic lens through which the Greeks understood existence. It was an era of triumph over primordial chaos, of divine personalities shaping the world, and of human beings learning to navigate a universe ruled by both fate and intervention. Zeus and his siblings were not perfect rulers, but their reign defined the cosmos, embedding moral lessons, heroic inspiration, and cultural identity for generations of storytellers and listeners alike. Through tales of conflict, love, cunning, and courage, the age of the Olympians remains an enduring testament to the richness of Greek mythology, a period where gods walked among mortals in story and spirit, shaping a world that was as fascinating as it was terrifying. Chapter 5: Fire and Punishment, Prometheus and Pandora. When we speak of Greek mythology, there are few tales as striking, as morally tangled, or as hauntingly human as the story of Prometheus and Pandora. Their names are whispered across time, their actions echoing through the ages like a warning, a lesson, and a reflection of mankind's eternal struggle against fate and authority. To understand their story, we must step into a world where the boundaries between divine power and human suffering blur, where fire is not just warmth but rebellion, and a simple jar becomes the vessel of the world's sorrows. Prometheus, whose name literally means forethought, was no ordinary titan. Unlike his kin, who were consumed by ambition or tyranny, Prometheus looked toward humanity with a sense of vision and empathy, that would seal his fate. In a universe dominated by Zeus, a ruler as capricious as he was formidable, Prometheus dared to think independently. It began with his greatest gift, or theft, depending on one's perspective: fire. The gods had hoarded it, keeping its warmth, its light, and its transformative power from mortals. Fire, after all, was not merely a tool. It was knowledge, technology, and civilization itself. To steal it was to challenge the cosmic hierarchy. Imagine the scene: Prometheus ascending Mount Olympus under the cloak of night, the stolen flame cradled in a hollow fennel stalk, a tiny glow against the vast darkness of the divine realm. Every step was a gamble, every shadow a threat. He reached the mortal world, and in a single, defiant act, he gifted fire to humanity. The consequences were immediate and far-reaching. Villages, previously cold and dark, began to burn with hearth fires. Pottery, metalwork, and cooking became possible, and with them, the dawn of civilization advanced. But Zeus, whose gaze could pierce both cloud and conscience, was enraged. The theft of fire was more than disobedience. It was a rebellion against his will. Zeus's punishment was as ingenious as it was cruel. Prometheus was bound to a remote cliff, a rock jutting out like the edge of the world itself, while a giant eagle, emblem of divine wrath, feasted daily on his liver. In ancient Greek belief, the liver symbolized the seat of life and emotion, and the daily regeneration of this vital organ ensured that Prometheus's torment was eternal. Picture the cold wind whipping across the jagged cliffs, the sun setting over distant mountains, and the eagle's shadow falling repeatedly over the Titan. Yet, despite his agony, Prometheus remained unyielding. His defiance became emblematic of resilience, foresight, and the unquenchable desire to elevate humanity. But Prometheus's story does not exist in isolation. It is inextricably linked to Pandora, the first woman created by the gods. Here, mythology introduces a striking counterpoint. If Prometheus represents foresight and rebellion, Pandora embodies curiosity, beauty, and inadvertent chaos. Crafted by Hephaestus from clay, adorned with gifts from each Olympian, grace from Aphrodite, cunning from Hermes, curiosity itself from Athena, Pandora was both a marvel and a warning. Zeus, in orchestrating her creation, sought to balance the scales. Humanity had been empowered by fire, but they would also be tested by temptation. And then, the jar, or pythos, appears. It is said that Pandora was given a container and instructed never to open it. But human or semi-divine curiosity is a relentless force. Inevitably, Pandora lifted the lid, unleashing plagues, suffering, and all the miseries that would afflict mankind. Disease, sorrow, envy, and despair. Only hope remained, trapped at the bottom. A fragile reminder that even in the darkest circumstances, humanity retains the capacity for resilience. Visualize the moment. Pandora's hands trembling, the jar trembling with anticipation, a golden glow breaking into a whirlwind of darkness, and the world forever changed in an instant. The interplay of these two stories, Prometheus and Pandora, creates a profound duality. On one hand, we see the audacity of foresight, the courage to challenge the divine, and the sacrifices made in the name of progress. On the other, we witness the vulnerabilities inherent in curiosity, desire, and the unforeseen consequences of divine interaction. Together, they illustrate the Greek understanding of balance, hubris, and the delicate tension between power and mortality. Moreover, these myths were not just allegorical. They were deeply tied to the lived experience of ancient Greeks. Fire, for instance, was central to domestic life, religious rites, and craftsmanship. The loss or gain of fire could symbolize the fragility of survival, the dependence of humans on the natural and divine world, and the potential for knowledge to both empower and punish. Pandora's jar too speaks to social and moral anxieties, the fear of the unknown, the consequences of temptation, and the pervasive awareness that actions, however innocent, can ripple into catastrophe. In later interpretations, artists, poets, and philosophers returned repeatedly to these figures. Prometheus became a symbol of rebellion against tyranny and the pursuit of enlightenment, celebrated in literature from Aeschylus to Percy Bysshe Shelley. Pandora's story, meanwhile, prompted reflection on the human condition, morality, and the inescapable presence of suffering. The two narratives, entwined in origin, continue to resonate because they address questions as old as civilization itself. How do we balance knowledge and responsibility? How do curiosity and innovation coexist with the potential for disaster? And ultimately, can hope endure even when all else fails? In contemplating these myths, one cannot help but reflect on the theatricality of Greek storytelling. The mountains trembled, the gods schemed, the mortal world quaked under the weight of divine actions, yet the human element remained central. Prometheus bled, suffered, and yet persisted. Pandora opened the jar, wept at the unleashed horrors, and still clutched hope. It is this focus on human experience, the pain, the courage, the frailty, that makes the story not merely entertaining, but hauntingly relatable, even millennia later. Thus, Prometheus and Pandora remain enduring figures of the Greek imagination. The Titan, who defied the skies to benefit mortals, and the woman, whose curiosity forever altered the human landscape. They remind us that progress often comes at a cost, that curiosity may lead to both enlightenment and suffering, and that even in the face of divine power or destiny itself, resilience, foresight, and hope remain our most vital tools. Chapter 6. Love, Jealousy, and Revenge. The Stories of the Gods. In Greek mythology, the gods are not distant, impassive figures. They are intensely human in their emotions, desires, and follies. They love, they envy, they rage, and they scheme, and their stories reveal the eternal truths of passion, jealousy, and vengeance. To understand the divine narratives of love and rivalry is to step into a realm where emotions shape the cosmos itself, where the personal grievances of immortals ripple outward to affect mortals, heroes, and the natural world alike. Among the most renowned tales of divine love is that of Zeus, king of the Olympians. Zeus's infatuations were legendary, often leading to chaos on both Mount Olympus and the mortal realm. From his pursuit of Europa, disguised as a magnificent bull, to his relentless courtship of Leda, each story intertwines desire, deception, and the exercise of divine power. His consort Hera, the goddess of marriage, embodies the other side of this celestial drama: jealousy, vengeance, and the unyielding assertion of her authority. Her anger towards Zeus's lovers and offspring is a recurring motif in Greek mythology, demonstrating that love among the gods is never simple and rarely benevolent. Take, for instance, the myth of Io Zeus, captivated by her beauty, transformed her into a white heifer to hide her from Hera's wrath. Yet, Hera's vigilance could not be deceived. She sent a gadfly to torment Io endlessly. The story portrays the entanglement of passion and jealousy, illustrating the lengths to which the gods would go to assert control and exact revenge. Io's journey, full of suffering and transformation, reflects the broader Greek understanding that love, while potent, often carries consequences as formidable as divine wrath itself. Similarly, Aphrodite, goddess of love and desire, exemplifies both the power and peril of attraction. Her manipulations and enchantments shape human and divine interactions alike. She incites love, fosters obsession, and fuels jealousy, as in the story of Pygmalion or the fatal rivalries leading to the Trojan War. Aphrodite's influence demonstrates how love is not merely an emotion, but a force that can reshape destinies, provoke conflicts, and reveal the vulnerabilities of gods and mortals alike. Yet love is inseparable from jealousy and revenge in the divine narrative. Hera's unrelenting pursuit of Zeus's lovers is only one manifestation of this. Consider Athena and Arachne, a mortal weaver whose skill rivaled the goddess's own. Arachne's hubris invoked Athena's wrath, resulting in her transformation into a spider, a story simultaneously about pride, rivalry, and the consequences of challenging divine authority. Greek mythology often frames revenge as both personal and cosmic, a reminder that even the smallest actions can provoke responses that reverberate across time and space. Another vivid example is the tale of Apollo and Daphne. Apollo, struck by Cupid's arrow, falls hopelessly in love with the nymph Daphne. She, hit by an arrow of indifference, flees. The chase ends only with her transformation into a laurel tree, a poignant symbol of unfulfilled desire. Here, Greek mythology intertwines beauty, longing, and the inevitability of fate. The gods' passions are not mere indulgences. They are narrative engines, shaping the world and influencing both mortal and immortal lives. The interplay of love, jealousy, and revenge extends beyond the Olympians to the entire pantheon. Poseidon's vendettas, Artemis's protection of her chastity, and Demeter's grief over Persephone's abduction all illustrate the intensity with which divine emotions manifest. These stories remind us that the gods' personalities are not abstract. They are active forces in the natural order, influencing seasons, wars, and the fortunes of mortals. The Greeks saw their world as intimately connected with the divine, where emotional currents among gods could alter tides, crops, and destinies. The consequences of divine jealousy often culminated in punishment and transformation. Actaeon, turned into a stag by Artemis for seeing her bathing, and Niobe, whose hubris against Leto led to the loss of her children, exemplify this theme. Here, Greek mythology explores moral and emotional dynamics, emphasizing the hazards of offending the gods or underestimating the power of their passions. Love and jealousy are intertwined with justice, vengeance, and the intricate tapestry of cosmic order. These myths also reflect on human nature, as the gods' emotions mirror mortal experiences. The intensity of divine love, envy, and retribution magnifies ordinary feelings, creating stories that resonate across centuries. Mortals often suffer as proxies for divine rivalries, learning that their fates are bound to forces larger than themselves, yet intimately familiar in their emotional logic. It is this connection that makes Greek mythology eternally compelling. The divine is both alien and profoundly human, a mirror of our desires, flaws, and ambitions. Moreover, the stories underscore the complexity of morality in Greek mythology. There is seldom a clear dichotomy between good and evil. Zeus's lust leads to suffering, but also the birth of heroes. Hera's jealousy punishes the innocent, but asserts cosmic balance. Aphrodite's interventions provoke chaos, yet inspire love and beauty. The gods' actions are not simplistic moral lessons. They are narratives layered with psychological insight, cultural values, and existential reflection. The stories of love, jealousy, and revenge among the gods of Olympus reveal a universe in which emotions are as potent as power, and choices, both divine and mortal, carry immense consequences. These tales illuminate the human experience, magnified and dramatized through the lens of immortality, creating a rich tapestry of narrative complexity, from Zeus's tempestuous romances to Hera's calculated vengeance, from Apollo's yearning to Artemis's righteous anger. Greek mythology presents a world where passion, envy, and retaliation shape destinies and define the very nature of existence itself. Chapter 7. Poseidon's Realm, the Sea as Power and Terror. The sea is never a passive backdrop. It is a realm of awe-inspiring majesty and capricious danger, presided over by Poseidon, god of the oceans, earthquakes, and horses. Unlike the sunlit heights of Olympus, Poseidon's domain is vast, dark, and unpredictable, a place where storms can rise without warning and the depths conceal both wonder and terror. His influence stretches from the surging waves that lap at coastal cities to the sudden earthquakes that shake the foundations of entire regions. To understand Poseidon is to grasp the duality of the sea itself. It is a source of life and trade, inspiration and destruction, beauty and fear. Poseidon's character is both commanding and volatile. He embodies the sea's duality, capable of generous protection, but equally prone to violent wrath. Tales of his anger illustrate the peril inherent in underestimating the power of the oceans. Consider the myth of Odysseus. After blinding Polyphemus, Poseidon's son, the sea god punishes the hero with a decade-long journey fraught with storms, shipwrecks, and monstrous creatures. The narrative captures the mercurial nature of Poseidon's temperament, an ever-present reminder that humans, despite ingenuity or courage, are subject to the sea's whims. The Greeks understood the oceans not merely as a natural resource, but as a divine instrument, reflecting Poseidon's moods and authority. Sailors offered prayers, sacrifices, and rituals to appease him before voyages, acknowledging that the god could grant safe passage or summon devastating tempests. Seafarers' livelihoods depended on favor, and Poseidon's caprice turned the very water meant to nourish into a lethal adversary. His trident, a symbol of control over both sea and earth, represents the thin boundary between stability and chaos, a tangible reminder that mastery over nature is always conditional, always tentative. Poseidon's influence extended beyond the human and into the supernatural. He is credited with the creation of the horse, a creature emblematic of both freedom and strength, linking terrestrial power with the untamed sea. In mythology, horses were often connected to naval endeavors, speed, and the fury of storms, reinforcing Poseidon's dominion over motion, both on land and in water. His temperamental nature parallels the unpredictability of his creations, majestic and beautiful, yet potentially destructive when provoked. Stories of Poseidon's rivalries among the gods further reveal the intersection of power, ego, and retribution in mythology. His competition with Athena over Athens, for instance, underscores the complex interplay of human ambition, divine pride, and urban identity. Poseidon offered a saltwater spring, a testament to his maritime authority, while Athena gifted the olive tree, symbolizing peace, prosperity, and practical utility. The Athenians chose Athena, inciting Poseidon's wrath, and leaving a permanent mark of tension between the god of the sea and the goddess of wisdom. Such myths reflect the ancient Greeks' nuanced understanding of divine influence over human affairs, where natural forces are inseparable from cultural and political identity. The sea itself, as Poseidon's realm, is populated with legendary beings that blur the line between wonder and horror. Sea monsters like Scylla and Charybdis, mermaids, and the mysterious unseen denizens of the deep exemplify the ever-present danger and majesty of the waters. Sailors' fears and imaginings find narrative expression through these creatures, personifying the unknown and reinforcing the gods' dominion over realms inaccessible to mortals. Every wave, whirlpool, and storm becomes a potential story of divine intervention, punishment, or reward, reinforcing the notion that the sea is not merely a setting, but an active character in myth. Poseidon's influence over mortals is not limited to vengeance. He also bestows boons and inspires greatness. Consider the legend of Theseus, who received Poseidon's guidance to navigate the labyrinthine sea routes and confront monstrous challenges. Similarly, the gods' favor ensured prosperous fishing, safe voyages, and naval victories. These myths reveal the duality of divine patronage. To earn Poseidon's protection, humans must demonstrate respect, skill, and humility, acknowledging the sea's might as both a physical and spiritual force. Furthermore, Poseidon's connection to natural disasters emphasizes his power over both sea and land. Earthquakes, sometimes called Poseidon's shaking, remind mortals that his influence is not confined to waves. The god's anger could manifest in terrestrial upheaval, linking human vulnerability to cosmic forces beyond comprehension. Temples dedicated to Poseidon were often strategically placed near coastlines or fault lines, underscoring the practical as well as symbolic reverence the Greeks held for him. Through ritual, myth, and architecture, they sought to navigate the tension between divine favor and peril, understanding that survival required both piety and prudence. The god's personality is vividly illustrated through his relationships and offspring. Poseidon fathered a variety of beings, from heroic figures to dangerous monsters, each reflecting aspects of his temper and domain. Triton, his merman herald, embodies the communicative power of the sea, while the Cyclopes, sometimes considered his progeny, represent the raw, untamed force of nature. Even minor figures in myths often carry the imprint of Poseidon's capriciousness, reinforcing the pervasive influence of his character across stories, geographies, and generations. In examining the cultural and symbolic resonance of Poseidon, one sees that he is more than a deity of water. He embodies the unpredictability of life itself. Trade, travel, warfare, and agriculture all depended on forces under his sway. His narratives reveal humanity's attempts to comprehend and negotiate a world where the natural and supernatural intermingle. In literature, art, and ritual, Poseidon's presence reminds mortals that power is not absolute, that strength and skill must be tempered with respect, foresight, and an understanding of forces beyond human control. Finally, Poseidon's realm is a metaphor for the human psyche, vast, deep, and filled with hidden currents. Just as the sea can nurture or destroy, so too can ambition, desire, and emotion. The myths encourage reflection on human behavior, morality, and the consequences of actions in a world governed by both visible and invisible forces. Poseidon's fury and generosity alike teach lessons in humility, courage, and resilience, highlighting the dynamic interplay between human endeavor and divine oversight. Through storms, monsters, heroic guidance, and capricious wrath, Poseidon's narratives paint a complex portrait of power and terror. The god of the sea is not merely a figure of worship or fear. He is a symbol of the immense and often contradictory forces shaping the natural and moral world. To understand Poseidon is to appreciate the sea's beauty and peril, the delicate balance of awe and dread, and the enduring power of myth to illuminate the intricate relationship between humans and the forces that govern their lives. Chapter 8. The Underworld, Hades, and the Realm of the Dead. The Underworld is a realm unlike any other, a shadowy mirror of the living world, ruled by Hades, the god of the dead. Far from being a mere place of horror, It is a complex domain of judgment, punishment, and sometimes reward, reflecting the Greeks' nuanced understanding of mortality and the afterlife. The underworld's geography is intricate and symbolic. The river Styx winds through its depths, Charon ferries souls across the waters, and Cerberus, the three-headed hound, guards the entrance with unwavering vigilance. These elements create a setting that is both terrifying and fascinating, a place where morality, fate, and divine authority intersect. Hades himself is a god of contrasts. He is not malevolent in the way mortals might fear. He is impartial, unyielding, and inexorably tied to the natural order of life and death. Unlike Zeus or Poseidon, Hades rarely intervenes in human affairs without purpose, and his temperament is marked by a solemn dignity. His presence is felt rather than celebrated. Mortals rarely invoke his name directly in prayers, wary of attracting his attention. Yet his role is indispensable. Hades maintains the balance between life and death, ensuring that souls reach their proper destinations, whether in the blissful fields of Elysium or the tormenting depths of Tartarus. The myths surrounding Hades are rich with both terror and tragedy. The abduction of Persephone, daughter of Demeter, is perhaps the most famous story, illustrating the complexities of consent, power, and seasonal cycles. Hades' love for Persephone is both possessive and enduring. Her annual return to the living world brings fertility to the earth, while her time in the underworld reminds humans of death's inevitability. This myth embodies the duality of the underworld. It is not merely a place of fear, but also one of renewal, cyclical balance, and reflection on the human condition. The underworld is populated by a variety of beings, each symbolizing different aspects of death and morality. The Erinyes, or Furies, pursue those who commit heinous crimes, exacting retribution without mercy. Shades of the dead, or phantoms, wander the fields of asphodel, representing souls in a liminal state, neither rewarded nor punished, reflecting the Greek view that not all lives merit distinction in death. Tartarus, the deep abyss for the most egregious sinners, houses monstrous figures such as the Titans who defied the Olympians. Each layer of the underworld conveys a moral and spiritual dimension, illustrating that death is not simply an end, but a continuation of cosmic order and justice. Hades' dominion also intersects with human ambition and heroism. Heroes like Orpheus, Heracles, and Odysseus navigate the underworld, confronting its dangers, negotiating with its denizens, and gaining knowledge or favor. These journeys reveal the underworld as a space of challenge and revelation, where courage, cunning, and humility are tested. Orpheus's attempt to rescue Eurydice demonstrates the emotional and psychological weight of mortality, while Heracles' capture of Cerberus symbolizes mastery over death's symbolic and literal boundaries. Through these narratives, the Greeks explored the interplay between human agency and divine decree. The rivers of the underworld, Styx, Lethe, Acheron, Phlegethon, and Cocytus, carry immense symbolic significance. The Styx represents solemn oaths and unbreakable contracts. Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, allows souls to release memories of mortal life. Acheron, the river of pain, underscores suffering. Phlegethon, of fire, reflects punishment. And Cocytus, the river of wailing, embodies grief and despair. These waters, often dangerous to navigate, demonstrate that the journey through the afterlife is fraught with spiritual and moral consequences, reinforcing Hades' role as overseer and judge. Temples and rituals dedicated to Hades were unusual, often private or secretive, reflecting the Greeks' ambivalent relationship with death. Offerings were made to appease or honor the god without attracting undue attention. and funerary practices were designed to ensure proper passage into his realm. The presence of coins on the eyes of the deceased to pay Charon exemplifies this practical reverence, linking ritual to survival in the afterlife. Mortals recognized that Hades' domain, though shadowy, was governed by rules and logic, and that respect and preparation were essential for navigating it successfully. Hades' relationship with other gods also reveals his integral place in the cosmic hierarchy. Though he rarely leaves the underworld, his influence touches all realms. Zeus and Poseidon share governance of the world's domains, sky, sea, and underworld, demonstrating a balance of power among the Olympians. Hades' decisions about the fate of souls affect divine and mortal plans alike, making him a central figure in the moral and spiritual economy of Greek mythology. The underworld is not solely punitive. The Elysian fields, reserved for heroes and the virtuous, provide a vision of peace, reward, and eternal satisfaction. The Isles of the Blessed further extend this promise, emphasizing that the underworld accommodates both justice and reward, not merely suffering. This duality underscores a Greek conception of life and death as part of an interconnected cycle, where actions in the mortal world echo into eternity. Finally, the underworld's imagery, from its dark rivers to shadowy landscapes, embodies the psychological and existential concerns of the Greeks. It reflects anxieties about mortality, justice, and the unknown, while offering narratives that explore courage, morality, and the consequences of desire and ambition. Hades' realm teaches that death, though feared, is an essential and structured part of existence, demanding both respect and understanding. Through Hades and the underworld, Greek mythology presents a rich tapestry of life, death, morality, and divine oversight. The realm is terrifying yet ordered, mysterious yet revealing, a reflection of the human psyche and the natural order. To enter the underworld in myth is to confront the inevitability of death, the weight of one's actions, and the enduring influence of divine power, making it a cornerstone of the Greek mythological imagination. Chapter 9. Apollo and Dionysus. Order and ecstasy. Greek mythology often frames the cosmos in terms of balance and duality, and no pair illustrates this more vividly than Apollo and Dionysus. These two Olympian gods represent opposing yet complementary forces. Apollo embodies order, reason, and harmony, while Dionysus channels ecstasy, chaos, and the primal urges of the human spirit. Their stories illuminate the tension between structure and freedom, intellect and instinct, civilization and nature, and their influence extends from divine realms to human lives, culture, and ritual practices. Apollo, the god of the sun, prophecy, music, and healing, personifies clarity, foresight, and the rational mind. His presence brings light, both literal and metaphorical, illuminating hidden truths and offering guidance to mortals and gods alike. Temples dedicated to Apollo, such as the famous sanctuary at Delphi, served as centers of prophecy, where the Pythia delivered cryptic yet influential oracles. Through Apollo, the Greeks sought to impose order on the uncertainties of life, to find patterns in chaos, and to pursue aesthetic and intellectual excellence. His lyre, his bow, and his radiant chariot across the sky symbolize discipline, precision, and the harmonization of human experience with cosmic order. In stark contrast stands Dionysus, the god of wine, fertility, theatre, and ecstatic celebration. Dionysus embodies the unpredictable, uncontainable energies that dwell within both nature and humanity. He encourages indulgence in passion, revelry, and sensory experience, breaking down the rigid structures that Apollo upholds. Followers of Dionysus, known as Maenads, engaged in frenzied dances and rites, often moving beyond reason into states of ecstatic liberation. His worship emphasized the fluidity of life, the power of transformation, and the necessity of confronting primal instincts, showing that chaos and emotion are as essential to existence as logic and restraint. The myths of Apollo and Dionysus often illustrate the interplay between their respective spheres. In art, literature, and ritual, these gods are depicted as embodying extremes that must coexist. Apollo's rationality can temper Dionysian excess, preventing descent into uncontrollable chaos, while Dionysian energy revitalizes Apollo's order, preventing it from becoming rigid or lifeless. This duality mirrors human nature. The mind seeks understanding and control, yet the body and spirit crave experience and liberation. Greek culture celebrated this dynamic through festivals, theatre, music, and philosophy, showing a sophisticated awareness of psychological balance. Apollo's interactions with mortals further demonstrate his principles of order and foresight. He rewarded skill, clarity, and dedication, while punishing hubris, deceit, or disobedience. For example, the tale of Niobe, who boasted of her superiority over Leto, Apollo's mother, shows the dangers of pride and the enforcement of cosmic justice. In contrast, Dionysus often engaged with mortals in ways that defied convention. He could grant inspiration and ecstasy, as with the poetic and theatrical achievements associated with his festivals, but he could also punish those who denied his divinity or attempted to suppress natural impulses, as in the story of Pentheus in Euripides' Bacchae. These narratives reveal a moral framework in which order and chaos are not simply good and evil, but complementary forces guiding human and divine behavior. The tension between Apollo and Dionysus is particularly evident in Greek art and literature. Vase paintings, sculptures, and dramas frequently juxtapose their symbols. Apollo's lyre, laurel wreath, and radiant halo against Dionysus's vine, Thyrsus' staff, and ecstatic retinue. The theatre itself became a medium where this duality played out. Tragedy often embodies Apollo's concern with moral and cosmic order, while comedy and satyr plays revel in Dionysian chaos, humor, and transgression. By engaging audiences in both contemplation and release, the Greeks internalized the lessons of these two gods, understanding that life requires both discipline and abandon. The cults of Apollo and Dionysus also reflect their distinct natures. Apollo's followers emphasize purity, ritual precision, and prophetic insight. Festivals like the Pythian Games celebrated athletic and musical excellence, linking physical prowess with intellectual and spiritual refinement. In contrast, Dionysian cults encouraged liberation from ordinary constraints through music, dance, intoxication, and theatrical performance. Initiates underwent rites of transformation, sometimes experiencing a symbolic death and rebirth, signifying the temporary suspension of ego and social order to achieve deeper spiritual insight. These practices reinforce the god's philosophical significance. Order and ecstasy, discipline and release exist in a dynamic equilibrium that shapes human experience. Philosophers, particularly Nietzsche, later reflected on this duality in The Birth of Tragedy, identifying Apollo and Dionysus as symbolic of rationality and instinct, form and chaos, individuation and dissolution. The Greeks themselves may not have articulated this framework so explicitly, but their myths, festivals, and artistic expressions reveal an intuitive understanding of these forces. In a society that valued both civic structure and personal fulfillment, the coexistence of Apollo and Dionysus provided a moral and spiritual guide for balancing the demands of intellect, society, and instinctual life. The mythological narratives also explore the consequences of neglecting either principle. Overemphasis on Apollo's order can lead to sterility, rigidity, and a lack of vitality, while unchecked Dionysian indulgence risks destruction, moral chaos, and loss of social cohesion. Heroes and mortals in myth navigate these tensions, often learning through suffering, ecstasy, or divine interaction. For instance, Orpheus, who embodies Apollo's artistry, also experiences the Dionysian extremes of grief and passion in his attempt to retrieve Eurydice from the underworld. His story highlights the inseparability of reason and emotion in human life, and the profound consequences when one is denied or ignored. Ultimately, Apollo and Dionysus together represent a holistic vision of existence. Greek mythology does not privilege one over the other. Instead, it celebrates their interplay as necessary for harmony, growth, and understanding. Order provides structure to chaos, and chaos injects vitality into order, mirroring the rhythms of nature, society, and human psychology. Their stories remind us that life is neither fully controlled nor entirely unrestrained. Wisdom lies in navigating the space between, honoring both principles while avoiding the extremes that threaten balance. In conclusion, the duality of Apollo and Dionysus is one of Greek mythology's most enduring lessons. By embodying order and ecstasy, these gods teach mortals and immortals alike about the tensions that define existence: reason versus instinct, structure versus freedom, clarity versus passion. Their narratives, rituals, and artistic representations demonstrate a profound awareness of human nature and cosmic balance, inviting reflection on the delicate interplay between discipline and indulgence. Through Apollo and Dionysus, the Greeks offered a vision of life that embraces complexity, recognizes the value of both restraint and liberation, and celebrates the richness of the human experience in all its ordered and chaotic dimensions. Chapter 10. Monsters and Beasts, the Nightmares of Myth. Greek mythology is renowned not only for its gods and heroes, but also for the terrifying and awe-inspiring creatures that populate its stories. From the labyrinthine Minotaur to the serpentine Hydra, the myths of monsters and beasts reflect the ancients' attempts to grapple with fear, the unknown, and the chaotic forces of nature. These creatures are more than mere antagonists. They embody moral lessons, human anxieties, and the boundaries between civilization and wilderness. By examining these monsters, we gain insight into Greek culture, psychology, and the narrative artistry that continues to captivate audiences today. One of the most iconic monsters is the Minotaur, a half-man, half-bull creature born from the union of Pasiphae and a sacred bull. Confined within the labyrinth of Crete, the Minotaur symbolizes both unnatural birth and the consequences of divine punishment. Its story intertwines with the heroism of Theseus, who ventures into the maze to slay the beast, representing humanity's triumph over fear and chaos through courage, intelligence, and divine favor. The labyrinth itself, a complex and confounding structure, reflects the human mind's confrontation with the unknown, and the Minotaur's ferocity embodies the untamed forces that must be faced to achieve order. Similarly, the Hydra of Lerna embodies multiplicity of danger. This serpentine water monster, with regenerative heads, was nearly invincible, requiring Heracles' ingenuity and perseverance to overcome. Each severed head that grew back represents challenges that escalate when approached recklessly, symbolizing the relentless nature of struggle and the necessity of strategy and persistence. The Hydra's defeat is not merely a triumph of strength, but a lesson in foresight, adaptation, and the human capacity to confront overwhelming odds with intelligence and courage. Chimera, a fire-breathing hybrid of lion, goat, and serpent, represents the chaotic blending of natural forms into something terrifyingly unnatural. Its monstrous composition reflects both the unpredictability of the natural world and the moral and psychological hazards that arise when boundaries, physical, ethical, or social, are transgressed. Bellerophon's victory over the Chimera, aided by Pegasus, emphasizes divine support and human ingenuity in overcoming threats that appear insurmountable, reinforcing the recurring theme that monsters often test more than just physical courage. The Gorgons, particularly Medusa, encapsulate the theme of fear and forbidden knowledge, with snakes for hair and a gaze that turns mortals to stone. Medusa's story is intertwined with punishment, transformation, and mortality. Her defeat by Perseus is a tale of cunning, bravery, and divine assistance, showing that intellect and courage, rather than brute force alone, can overcome even the most terrifying of adversaries. The Gorgon's image in art and literature has endured for centuries, symbolizing danger, female power, and the tension between attraction and repulsion, beauty and horror. Greek mythology also presents creatures like the Harpy, Scylla, and Charybdis, who inhabit liminal spaces such as the sea or the skies. These beings embody the unpredictability of nature and the perilous boundaries that humans must navigate. Scylla, a monstrous figure with multiple heads, and Charybdis, a deadly whirlpool, together illustrate the impossibility of avoiding danger entirely. One must choose between equally perilous options, highlighting the ethical and strategic dilemmas that life imposes. Sailors' tales of these monsters reinforce the necessity of prudence, foresight, and respect for the forces beyond human control. Even seemingly symbolic monsters, like the Cerberus, the three-headed guardian of the underworld, convey profound cultural significance. Cerberus not only prevents the dead from leaving Hades, but also embodies the liminality between life and death, order and chaos. Heroes such as Heracles must confront these guardians as a demonstration of bravery, strength, and the ability to navigate transitions between realms. Cerberus's presence emphasizes that monsters are often gatekeepers of thresholds, testing the hero's readiness to face moral, psychological, and existential challenges. The myths of monsters often intersect with human morality. Monsters frequently punish hubris, greed, or disrespect for the gods, acting as instruments of divine justice. The Sphinx, with her riddles and lethal consequences for failure, is a prime example. She punishes arrogance and ignorance, rewarding wisdom and cleverness. Encounters with these creatures force heroes, and by extension the audience, to reflect on personal virtues, societal norms, and the consequences of transgression. Greek monsters are not mere symbols of fear, but also represent the unknown dimensions of the human psyche. The chaotic, hybrid, or grotesque forms of these creatures externalize internal struggles, rage, envy, desire, and the darker impulses of human nature. They act as mirrors, forcing characters and audiences alike to confront what is repressed, feared, or misunderstood within themselves. In this way, the myths serve both as cautionary tales and as explorations of psychological complexity, showing that monsters are as much a part of human experience as of the supernatural. The enduring appeal of Greek monsters also lies in their adaptability. Later mythographers, artists, and writers have reinterpreted these beings in countless ways, from Renaissance paintings to modern literature, films, and games. Yet the original myths retain a compelling psychological and moral depth, demonstrating why tales of the Minotaur, Hydra, Chimera, and others continue to resonate. These stories are not only about physical confrontation, but about confronting fear, moral ambiguity, and the limits of human understanding. The monsters and beasts of Greek mythology illustrate a profound truth. Civilization is constantly negotiating with chaos. Through stories of confrontation, cunning, and courage, the Greeks explored the tension between human ingenuity and the wild, untamable forces of the universe. Monsters are agents of danger, morality, and psychological insight, teaching lessons that extend far beyond their immediate narratives. They are simultaneously fearsome adversaries, moral arbiters, and reflections of the human condition, reminding us that to engage with the unknown is to engage with ourselves. The nightmares of myth are far more than entertainment. They are cultural touchstones, reflecting the fears, aspirations, and ethical frameworks of ancient Greek society. Each encounter with a monster teaches resilience, ingenuity, and the necessity of balance between courage and caution. By studying these myths, we gain not only a deeper understanding of ancient Greek culture, but also enduring insights into the human psyche and the perennial struggle to confront the unknown. Monsters are, in essence, a bridge between fear and understanding, chaos and order, the tangible and the symbolic, a duality that continues to inspire, terrify, and enlighten to this day. Chapter 11. Labours of Heracles. Trials of a demigod. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and dust, a stifling weight pressing down on the mortal and divine alike. Heracles, son of Zeus and Alcmene, stood at the edge of yet another impossible task, his muscles taut like the strings of a lyre ready to snap. Every labour he undertook was more than a physical trial. It was a confrontation with the capricious whims of the gods, the relentless nature of fate, and the shadows of his own guilt. For it was Hera, the queen of Olympus, who had set these trials upon him, each a merciless echo of her wrath for the birth of a child not her own. From the outset, Heracles' life had been marked by both divine favour and divine fury. His strength was legendary, yet his spirit was burdened by a curse that drove him toward acts he would later regret. The 12 labours, though often recounted in a dry list by historians, were, in reality, a tapestry of human emotion and mythic terror. They spanned lands both familiar and strange, pits of darkness, rivers of blood, and forests where monstrous beasts roamed free. The first labour, the slaying of the Nemean lion, was not simply about conquering a beast, but facing the indomitable force of nature itself. Its fur was said to be impervious to any weapon forged by human hands. A metaphor, perhaps, for the obstacles life sets that cannot be overcome by strength alone. Heracles wrestled the lion, hand to paw, in a battle that seemed to stretch time itself, until he finally understood that brute force must be coupled with ingenuity. Strangling the beast with his own hands, he learned the first lesson of the labours. Power without wisdom is hollow. Next came the Linnaean Hydra, a creature of multiple heads, each sprouting anew when severed. Here, the horror was compounded by the impossibility of victory. Every decapitated head birthed 2 more, a nightmarish reminder of the persistence of challenges that multiply if not addressed with foresight. Heracles, with the aid of his nephew Iolaus, learned to cauterize each wound immediately, an act symbolizing the need for decisive and cunning strategy in the face of adversity. The Hydra's poison lingered, a shadow of danger that would follow him long after the monster lay dead, infecting his path with latent peril. Perhaps no labour was as psychologically taxing as the capture of the Ceryneian hind, a creature sacred to Artemis, fleet and untouchable. The hind tested not only Heracles' patience, but his reverence for forces beyond his control. Days turned to weeks as he pursued it across the forests of Arcadia, his obsession gnawing at the edges of reason. Here, the myth whispers of a demigod learning humility. Strength alone could not force compliance from the divine. Respect and understanding were equally vital. The fourth labor, the capture of the Erymanthian boar, was raw and chaotic. The boar was a creature of pure destruction, flattening villages and terrorizing the land. Heracles drove it into the deep snows of Mount Erymanthus, the animal thrashing and roaring, a storm of muscle and fury. When the boar was finally subdued, the labor did not end with its capture. It was a study in control, in mastering not only the beast but the storm it brought in its wake. Each subsequent labor presented its own theatre of challenge. The Augean stables, clogged for decades with the filth of neglect, demanded ingenuity over force. Heracles rerouted rivers, cleansing in a single day what generations had failed to manage. The birds of Stymphalus, the Cretan bull, the mares of Diomedes. Each episode was a vivid tableau, rich with colour, sound and terror. These were not merely stories of triumph. They were lessons in perseverance, strategy, and moral complexity. The penultimate trials brought Heracles into direct confrontation with the divine and the infernal. The girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, tested diplomacy against deceit. The cattle of Geryon required a journey to the ends of the known world, encountering landscapes both awe-inspiring and lethal. And the capture of Cerberus, guardian of the underworld, forced him to descend into the domain of death itself, confronting horrors mortal men could scarcely imagine. It was here that the labor became symbolic. Heracles did not merely fight monsters. He faced the ultimate fear, mortality, and the boundaries imposed by gods and men alike. What binds these labors together is not only the spectacle of heroism, but the intimate depiction of struggle, suffering, and adaptation. Heracles' journey reflects the human condition magnified through myth, confronting challenges that seem insurmountable, wrestling with inner demons, navigating moral ambiguity, and finding the courage to persist when hope seems fragile. Each labor, in its essence, is a parable of resilience. Historians and storytellers alike have debated the significance of the labors. Were they moral tests, public spectacles, or metaphors for natural forces and human psychology? Perhaps they were all of these things. Heracles' tale endured because it spoke to the fundamental tension between potential and limitation, between divine expectation and mortal effort. The hero's path was never straightforward. It was a labyrinth of uncertainty, shadows, and occasional epiphanies that illuminated the nature of strength, courage, and cunning. By the time Heracles completed the 12 labors, he was more than a man or even a demigod. He had become a symbol, an embodiment of perseverance and ingenuity. His hands bore the marks of struggle, his mind the scars of judgment and fear. Yet he emerged from each trial tempered, aware that each victory was only a prelude to another challenge. The labors remind us that heroism is never merely a display of strength, but a careful orchestration of intellect, empathy, and unyielding determination. In recounting these labors today, we glimpse a world where gods intervened capriciously, where mortals were instruments and witnesses of divine narratives, and where courage was tested not only in battle, but in restraint, patience, and understanding. Heracles' story is, in essence, a reflection of our own struggles, magnified by the mythic scale of Olympus. His labors echo through time, teaching lessons that transcend the age of heroes, that adversity shapes character, that intellect is as vital as strength, and that the measure of a hero lies not solely in victories, but in the resolve to confront what others deem impossible. And so, the tale of Heracles endures, not merely as legend, but as a testament to the intertwined forces of fate, divinity, and human resilience. A narrative as vivid today as it was in the flickering torchlight of ancient Greece. Chapter 12. Perseus, Theseus, and the Slayers of Monsters. The night air hung heavy over the ancient lands of Greece, where shadows stretched long across the jagged hills and deep forests. It was a world alive with whispers of gods and mortals, heroes and beasts, each story echoing through marble halls and olive groves alike. Into this world stepped Perseus and Theseus, two demigods whose courage and cunning would forever mark the annals of Greek mythology. Unlike Heracles, whose labors were trials imposed by divine wrath, these heroes were drawn into quest by prophecy, honor, and the unyielding need to protect the innocent from the monstrous forces that lurked in the dark corners of their world. Perseus's tale begins with prophecy and peril. Born of Danae, daughter of King Acrisius, his birth itself was marked by fear and forewarning. Acrisius, terrified that the child would one day be his doom, cast Danae and her infant son into the sea in a chest, leaving them at the mercy of the waves. Yet, the god's hand intervened. Perseus and his mother survived, washing ashore on the island of Seriphos. It was here that his journey toward heroism truly began, under the shadow of divine favor and mortal threat. The greatest of Perseus' feats was the slaying of Medusa, the Gorgon whose gaze turned men to stone. Unlike Heracles' confrontations with brute strength, Perseus's victory demanded intellect, strategy, and divine aid. Armed with a mirrored shield from Athena, winged sandals from Hermes, and a sword sharp enough to cleave through stone, he approached Medusa's lair with a mixture of dread and determination. The lair was a place of petrified silence, statues of men and beasts frozen in terror, a grim testament to the danger within. Perseus's careful reflection of the Gorgon's image allowed him to strike without succumbing to her deadly gaze, severing her head and securing a weapon that would serve as a symbol of cunning over chaos. Theseus's path, while equally perilous, was rooted in civic responsibility as well as personal valor. Born in the city of Athens, his early life was a series of challenges that prepared him for the labyrinthine trials ahead. Among the most famous of these was his journey to Crete to face the Minotaur, a creature born of unnatural union and nourished by human sacrifice. Unlike Perseus, whose monsters were often solitary embodiments of terror, the Minotaur represented a societal horror, a cycle of violence imposed upon innocence. Theseus's descent into the labyrinth was as much an intellectual endeavor as a physical one, relying on Ariadne's thread to navigate the twisting corridors and confront the beast without succumbing to panic or despair. Both heroes' stories are threaded with encounters that test more than strength. They test morality, courage, and the capacity to act decisively in the face of uncertainty. Perseus' rescue of Andromeda from the sea monster Cetus is not simply a tale of heroism. It is a narrative woven with the tension between divine intervention, human initiative, and the ethics of power. Andromeda's chained figure against the crashing waves evokes a scene of both vulnerability and dramatic suspense, a tableau familiar to storytellers of the classical age, illustrating the interplay of fate, courage, and human agency. Theseus, too, faced trials beyond the Minotaur. His journey included encounters with bandits, brigands, and assassins, each episode a miniature moral and physical labyrinth. The hero's cunning in defeating Procrustes, who stretched or amputated travelers to fit his bed, illustrates the sharpness of mind required to navigate a world where monsters are not always mythic, but can also wear human faces. These episodes highlight an essential theme in Greek mythology: heroism is measured not solely by physical might, but by the combination of intelligence, strategy, and ethical judgment. The monsters themselves, Medusa, the Minotaur, the sea serpents, function as mirrors of human fears and societal anxieties. They are embodiments of chaos, of unnatural forces disrupting the order of daily life, demanding intervention from those willing to risk everything. The stories of Perseus and Theseus present the interplay between human ingenuity and divine influence, a recurring motif in Greek mythology. Each monster slain is not only a physical conquest, but a moral and psychological victory, an assertion that courage and cleverness can restore balance to a world teetering on the edge of disorder. Yet, the hero's path is rarely without tragedy or consequence. Perseus' return to Seriphos leads to the overthrow of King Polydectes, a tyrant whose cruelty mirrored the monstrous forces the hero had faced. Theseus's reign in Athens, while marked by reform and valor, was not devoid of suffering and moral compromise, illustrating the Greek understanding that heroism entails responsibility and the burdens of leadership. These narratives emphasize that the actions of heroes ripple through communities and generations, shaping societies as much as they shape individual destinies. What binds Perseus and Theseus to the larger tapestry of Greek mythology is their dual nature as mortals touched by divinity. Both receive guidance, tools, or aid from the gods, yet their victories are ultimately the result of personal courage, intellect, and persistence. These heroes demonstrate the complex interplay between fate and free will, a theme that resonates through the myths. Mortals may be guided by the divine, but they must navigate their own choices and confront the consequences with integrity and bravery. In examining the tales of these slayers of monsters, one finds recurring motifs of light and darkness, danger and ingenuity, fear and triumph. The labyrinths, both literal and metaphorical, illustrate the trials of decision-making under pressure. The monstrous adversaries symbolize societal and personal challenges, while the hero's journey reflects the human desire to overcome adversity and achieve lasting impact. Greek mythology, through these narratives, communicates profound truths about resilience, ethical judgment, and the intricate dance between human effort and divine design. By the conclusion of their respective quests, Perseus and Theseus emerged not only as heroes, but as enduring symbols of what it means to confront danger with courage, to combine intellect with strength, and to navigate the delicate balance between fate and self-determination. Their stories, echoing through the temples and amphitheaters of antiquity, continue to inspire reflection on the nature of bravery, the necessity of wisdom, and the eternal struggle between order and chaos. The legacies of Perseus and Theseus remain vivid, reminding us that even in a world ruled by capricious gods and monstrous threats, human ingenuity, courage, and morality can carve paths of triumph. In facing monsters both external and internal, these heroes illuminate the timeless narrative of challenge, growth, and the pursuit of justice and order amidst a universe that is often indifferent or even hostile to mortal aspirations. Thus, their tales endure, not merely as myth, but as mirrors to our own struggles, casting light on the eternal dance between fear and bravery, chaos and control, mortality and the divine. Chapter 13. The Trojan War, Glory and Ruin. The city of Troy stood proud and fortified, a jewel of the ancient world, its walls thick and impenetrable, its people thriving under the watchful eyes of their kings and gods alike. Yet, beneath the surface of bustling markets and serene temples, a storm of fate was gathering, a storm that would draw heroes from all corners of Greece into a decade-long conflict, the Trojan War. This war, immortalized in epic poems and stories, was not merely a clash of armies, but a crucible of glory, ambition, and ruin, where human desires and divine interventions intertwined inextricably. The roots of the conflict trace back to a single fateful event, the judgment of Paris. Paris, Prince of Troy, was asked to choose the fairest goddess among Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. The decision seemed simple, yet it carried consequences that would ripple across the known world. Choosing Aphrodite, seduced by the promise of Helen, the most beautiful mortal woman, Paris set into motion a chain of events that would lead to Helen's abduction and the fury of men bound by honor and oath. What began as a personal choice ignited a war that demanded the valor of heroes, the cunning of tacticians, and the endurance of armies stretched to their limits. From the Greek perspective, the call to arms was as much about honor and loyalty as it was about love and desire. Kings and warriors, bound by oath to Menelaus, Helen's husband, rallied to his cause. Among them were legendary figures: Achilles, unmatched in martial prowess, yet tormented by pride and mortality; Odysseus, whose intellect and guile often outweighed the strength of brute force; and Ajax, whose loyalty and courage became the backbone of the Greek assault. Each hero brought with him not only skill in combat, but the weight of reputation, ambition, and divine favor or disfavor, creating a complex web of motives and consequences that shaped the course of the war. Troy itself was no passive player. Hector, prince and champion of the city, embodied the courage, honor, and responsibility of defending one's homeland. His defense of Troy was not merely a physical struggle, but a moral and emotional one, representing the duty to family, city, and legacy. The walls of Troy, impregnably designed, became the stage for duels and strategies that tested both mortal endurance and divine patience. Gods and goddesses took sides openly, interfering in battles, granting strength, protection, or deadly curses, making every skirmish a delicate balance between mortal agency and celestial influence. The war was defined as much by its strategy as by its combat. The Greeks laid siege to Troy for 10 years, a testament to endurance, ingenuity, and the brutality of prolonged conflict. Each day brought stories of heroism and tragedy, as warriors faced off in single combat, ambushed enemy patrols, and navigated the precarious alliances that often determined survival or death. Battles were punctuated by acts of mercy and cruelty alike. The Greeks and Trojans alike suffered losses that could never be counted or fully mourned, each casualty a reminder of the high price of ambition, love, and vengeance. Among the most poignant stories is that of Achilles, whose wrath and pride influenced the fate of both armies. His quarrel with Agamemnon, the Greek commander, led to periods of withdrawal from battle, demonstrating that personal emotions and honor could shape the course of history as decisively as swords and spears. The death of Patroclus, his beloved companion, forced Achilles back into the fray with vengeance, highlighting the interplay of personal loss and martial duty. This narrative thread emphasizes a recurring theme in Greek mythology: the interweaving of emotion, morality, and heroic responsibility, where decisions are never purely strategic but deeply human. The fall of Troy itself was a masterpiece of strategy and deception, embodied in the legendary Trojan horse. Crafted under Odysseus's cunning plan, the wooden horse became the instrument through which the Greeks breached the seemingly impregnable city walls. This act, while brilliant, was also tragic, illustrating the fine line between ingenuity and betrayal, victory and moral compromise. Troy's destruction brought not only the physical ruin of its structures, but the collapse of a society. demonstrating the devastating consequences of ambition, divine caprice, and human error. Yet, the Trojan War was more than battles and strategy. It was a theatre of profound human emotion, love, jealousy, pride, fear, and grief intertwined with courage and heroism, creating a tapestry that continues to resonate. Helen, often depicted as the catalyst, was both victim and symbol of beauty, desire, and consequence. Hector's farewell to Andromache and Astyanax encapsulates the personal cost of war, a moment of tenderness amid relentless conflict. These narratives remind us that the Trojan War, while grand in scale, was intensely human, a reflection of society's triumphs, tragedies, and moral dilemmas. The epilogue of the war is equally instructive. Survivors, from the Greeks to the Trojans, face the aftermath of victory and defeat, a landscape transformed by death, loss, and moral ambiguity. Aeneas, destined to carry the remnants of Troy to a new land, exemplifies the continuity of hope and resilience amid ruin. The Greeks, victorious yet scarred, return to a homeland forever altered by the burdens of war. Through these narratives, the Trojan War emerges not merely as a tale of conflict, but as a meditation on the human condition, examining the consequences of pride, desire, and the relentless pursuit of glory. Ultimately, the story of the Trojan War serves as a nexus between human ambition and divine influence, a saga where gods intervene, heroes rise, and mortals suffer and strive. It is a testament to the enduring power of myth to capture the complexities of heroism, morality, and the fragility of human endeavors. Glory and ruin walk hand in hand, each victory shadowed by loss, each act of courage tempered by consequence. The Trojan War, remembered through epic poetry and legend, remains a mirror to our own struggles with ambition, loyalty, and the inexorable tides of fate. Through the lens of this war, Greek mythology offers enduring lessons that heroism is multifaceted, encompassing courage, wisdom, and moral judgment, that ambition, however noble, carries consequences, and that even the mightiest cities and heroes are subject to the whims of fate and the gods. The echoes of Troy resonate through time, reminding us of the complex interplay between human aspiration and divine orchestration, the delicate balance of honor and survival, and the timeless dance of glory and ruin. Chapter 14. After Troy, Odysseus and the long road home. The fall of Troy marked not only the end of a war, but the beginning of a journey fraught with trials, cunning, and the testing of mortal endurance. Among the Greek heroes, none faced a path as intricate and perilous as Odysseus, king of Ithaca, whose return home after the decade-long siege became legendary. His story, immortalized in the Odyssey, weaves together human resilience, divine interference, and the enduring quest for home, creating a narrative as compelling and instructive as the war itself. Odysseus departed Troy with the remnants of his fleet, yet his voyage was far from straightforward. The gods, capricious and intertwined with human fate, played a pivotal role in determining the course of his journey. Poseidon, angered by Odysseus blinding his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus, became a relentless adversary, sending storms, obstacles, and monstrous creatures to delay and torment the Greek hero. Meanwhile, Athena, the goddess of wisdom and patron of Odysseus, offered guidance, protection, and counsel, embodying the delicate balance between divine favor and mortal ingenuity. The challenges Odysseus faced were not merely physical, but psychological and moral. Each encounter tested his intellect, patience, and ethical judgment. The land of the lotus eaters, where intoxicating plants threatened to make men forget their purpose, presented a subtle but profound danger. the ease of forgetting duty when pleasure tempts the mind. Odysseus's ability to recognize the peril and compel his men onward demonstrates the nuanced nature of heroism, where mental fortitude equals physical prowess. Perhaps the most iconic episode of his journey is the encounter with Polyphemus, the Cyclops. Here, cunning and bravery converge. Odysseus devises a plan that requires both the strategic use of his limited resources and a careful manipulation of the giant's perception. His triumph, however, carries consequences, for the act of blinding Polyphemus invokes Poseidon's wrath, setting in motion years of torment. This interplay of action and repercussion highlights a recurring theme in Greek mythology, that even the most brilliant solutions come with moral and practical consequences that echo across time and space. Odysseus's voyage continued through lands and seas both wondrous and terrifying. Circe, the enchantress, transformed men into swine, testing his resolve and judgment. The journey to the underworld, where he sought prophecy from the dead seer Tiresias, confronted him with the realities of mortality, loss, and destiny. The sirens, whose song lured sailors to destruction, demanded ingenuity and discipline, as Odysseus had himself bound to the mast, while his crew, ears blocked, navigated past the fatal melody. Each encounter required a synthesis of courage, intellect, and moral awareness, illustrating that survival depends on more than strength alone. It requires perception, restraint, and wisdom. The trials of Odysseus were not confined to distant lands. They extended into personal and emotional realms. His longing for home, Ithaca, and his wife Penelope became the compass guiding him through peril. The obstacles he faced, storms, monsters, enchantresses, and divine wrath, serve as allegories for human struggle against adversity, temptation, and the unknown. The emotional weight of his journey is compounded by the loss of comrades, the uncertainty of fate, and the constant tension between desire and duty, making his Odyssey a profound exploration of human endurance and moral resilience. Among the defining moments of his journey is the episode with the Scylla and Charybdis, monstrous manifestations of unavoidable danger. Navigating between them required calculated risk, judgment, and acceptance of loss, as some men were inevitably sacrificed to ensure the survival of the rest. This harrowing passage symbolizes the difficult choices inherent in leadership and life itself. Sometimes, to preserve the greater good, painful decisions must be made, highlighting the intersection of strategy, ethics, and responsibility. Odysseus's return to Ithaca is the culmination of his journey, yet it is neither simple nor immediate. Disguised as a beggar to assess the state of his household, he encounters suitors vying for Penelope's hand, whose arrogance and impiety demand punishment. The eventual reclaiming of his home and kingdom is both violent and just, underscoring themes of justice, retribution, and the restoration of order. Odysseus's actions, though brutal, are framed by the necessity of preserving familial, social, and moral equilibrium, emphasizing the complex morality embedded within Greek heroic narratives. The story of Odysseus exemplifies the intertwining of human ingenuity and divine influence. While gods intervene, rewarding or punishing, it is Odysseus's intellect, adaptability, and ethical discernment that ultimately ensure his survival. This balance between fate and agency illustrates a fundamental tension in Greek mythology. The heroes are neither mere instruments of divine will, nor omnipotent masters of their destiny, but beings navigating a cosmos where intelligence, courage, and moral judgment shape outcomes in concert with, and sometimes in defiance of, celestial powers. Furthermore, The Odyssey emphasizes the psychological and ethical dimensions of heroism. Odysseus's cleverness, patience, and ability to learn from mistakes become as vital as his martial skills. His encounters with various peoples, gods, and monsters reveal the complexities of human nature. Curiosity and hubris, loyalty and betrayal, love and vengeance. These narratives transform his journey into a mirror reflecting the human condition, where survival, wisdom, and ethical action are inseparable from the exercise of courage and the embrace of responsibility. Ultimately, the long road home of Odysseus is more than a tale of adventure. It is a meditation on perseverance, morality, and the interplay of human and divine forces. Each challenge reinforces the necessity of balance between intellect and emotion, ambition and caution, justice and mercy. His story, resonating across centuries, teaches that heroism is multifaceted, encompassing physical prowess, psychological resilience, moral discernment, and an unyielding commitment to one's values and responsibilities. The Odyssey concludes not with the mere return to Ithaca, but with the restoration of order, justice, and identity. Odysseus reclaims his household, restores social and familial equilibrium, and achieves a hard-earned peace that resonates with the trials he endured. His journey remains a powerful narrative of endurance, ingenuity, and moral fortitude, illustrating that the pursuit of home and the preservation of one's values demand courage, intellect, and an unwavering spirit. Through the story of Odysseus, Greek mythology imparts timeless lessons: the importance of resilience in the face of adversity, the necessity of ethical judgment amid uncertainty, and the enduring power of human ingenuity guided by wisdom and foresight. His Odyssey, a testament to the complexity of human experience, continues to inspire, teach, and captivate, bridging the gap between ancient myth and contemporary reflection on the nature of heroism, destiny, and the pursuit of home. Chapter 15: Jason and the Argonauts, the quest for the Golden Fleece. The tale of Jason and the Argonauts stands as one of the most adventurous and perilous narratives in Greek mythology, embodying the quest for glory, the trials of leadership, and the enduring allure of heroism. Jason, son of Aeson, king of Iolcus, was thrust into a world of political intrigue and divine machinations from an early age. His quest for the Golden Fleece, a symbol of authority, divine favor, and the ultimate test of courage, set him upon a journey that combined human ambition, supernatural obstacles, and the timeless struggle between fate and free will. Jason's journey begins with the treacherous plots of Peleus, the usurping king who coveted the throne of Iolcus. Peleus, threatened by the prophecy that a man with one sandal would bring his downfall, manipulates circumstances to send Jason on a near impossible mission, retrieving the Golden Fleece from Colchis, a distant and exotic land at the edge of the known world. This premise establishes a narrative pattern common to Greek hero tales, where human cunning and divine intervention intersect, and the hero's worth is proven through perilous adventure rather than mere inheritance or birthright. The assembly of the Argonauts, a company of legendary heroes including Heracles, Orpheus, and Castor and Pollux, illustrates the Greek ideal of collaboration, where the strengths of individuals complement each other in the face of formidable challenges. Each member of the crew brings unique skills, combat prowess, musical talent, wisdom, and divine favor that are critical in navigating the multifaceted dangers of the journey. This collection of heroes serves as both a microcosm of Greek society and a narrative device to explore varied aspects of heroism, from physical bravery to moral and intellectual ingenuity. The voyage to Colchis is fraught with supernatural hazards, reflecting the Greek understanding of the world as a place where the divine and mortal constantly interact. Sea monsters, treacherous currents, and mystical islands test the Argonauts' skill and unity. These episodes not only heighten the dramatic tension, but also emphasize the themes of perseverance, strategic thinking, and the constant negotiation between human agency and the capricious will of the gods. For Jason, each challenge is an opportunity to demonstrate leadership, maintain morale, and assert his capability as both a warrior and a strategist. Upon reaching Colchis, Jason encounters the formidable King Aedes, a ruler whose wisdom and cruelty ensure that the Golden Fleece is no simple prize. Aedes imposes seemingly impossible tasks, including yoking fire-breathing bulls and sowing a field with dragon's teeth, from which sprung warriors must be defeated. These trials exemplify a recurring motif in Greek mythology. The hero must earn his reward through merit, intelligence, and courage, rather than entitlement. Jason's success depends not solely on his strength, but also on guidance from the sorceress Medea, whose knowledge of magic and divine counsel underscores the theme that human accomplishment often requires collaboration with forces beyond mortal comprehension. Medea, daughter of Aeetes, introduces a complex layer of moral and emotional tension to the narrative. Her assistance is motivated by love, loyalty, and the intertwining of personal and political interests. Through her, the story explores themes of devotion, manipulation, and the ethical ambiguities of power and influence. Jason's reliance on Medea's knowledge and sorcery reflects the Greek narrative principle that heroism encompasses both personal virtue and the ability to form strategic alliances, even when such relationships challenge conventional morality or societal norms. The theft of the Golden Fleece is marked by suspense, divine interference, and psychological drama. The sleepless dragon guarding the fleece, a symbol of vigilance and the ultimate challenge, represents the formidable barriers that heroes must confront. Jason's successful acquisition, achieved through courage, cunning, and Medea's intervention, illustrates the synthesis of human skill and supernatural aid that characterizes much of Greek myth. It is a moment of triumph, yet it is shadowed by moral complexity, as Medea's actions foreshadow future tragedy and the intertwining of love, betrayal, and consequence. The return voyage, fraught with additional challenges, reinforces the notion that the hero's journey is cyclical and that the path home is as dangerous and instructive as the outward quest. Encounters with hostile tribes, treacherous seas, and internal disputes among the Argonauts test leadership, camaraderie, and the resilience of each hero. These episodes serve to deepen the narrative, providing opportunities for character development and reflection on the broader implications of ambition, loyalty, and the consequences of human and divine actions. Jason's eventual return to Iolcus, ostensibly triumphant, reveals the limits of heroic accomplishment when faced with political and ethical realities. Despite achieving the fleece and demonstrating exceptional courage and ingenuity, he confronts treachery, betrayal, and the complex demands of power. This narrative turn emphasizes a critical aspect of Greek mythology: that victory in the external world does not guarantee moral or social resolution. The hero's journey, while marked by glory, is inseparable from ethical dilemmas, personal sacrifice, and the intricate web of human and divine relationships. The story of Jason and the Argonauts also highlights the enduring power of myth to reflect human experience. Themes of ambition, risk, loyalty, and the interplay of fate and choice resonate across time, offering insights into the ancient Greek worldview while providing timeless lessons on leadership, resilience, and the consequences of human action. Through their journey, the Argonauts become both models of heroism and mirrors of human complexity, embodying the struggle to achieve greatness while navigating moral, emotional, and existential challenges. Ultimately, the quest for the Golden Fleece exemplifies the dual nature of myth. It entertains with adventure, danger, and the supernatural, while simultaneously engaging with profound human questions about courage, ethics, and destiny. Jason's story, intertwined with the exploits of his companions and the intervention of divine forces, serves as a narrative of both aspiration and caution, illustrating that heroism is multifaceted, morally nuanced, and inextricably linked to the unpredictable currents of fate and human choice. The legacy of Jason and the Argonauts endures not simply because of the daring exploits or the magical artifacts, but because the story captures the essence of human striving, the pursuit of glory, the negotiation of ethical dilemmas, and the interplay of intellect, courage, and divine favor. It reminds us that the path to greatness is rarely linear, that every victory is shadowed by consequence, and that the true measure of a hero lies in the combination of skill, morality, and perseverance in the face of uncertainty. In conclusion, the voyage of Jason and the Argonauts offers a comprehensive exploration of Greek heroism, blending adventure, moral complexity, and supernatural intrigue into a story that has captivated audiences for millennia. Their journey across uncharted seas, through trials both tangible and metaphysical, provides a narrative framework for understanding the nature of ambition, the responsibilities of leadership, and the enduring interplay between human ingenuity and divine will. The Golden Fleece, while a tangible prize, symbolizes far more: the challenges of life, the rewards of courage and wisdom, and the timeless allure of the heroic quest. Chapter 16. Oedipus and the Tragedy of Fate. The story of Oedipus stands as one of the most harrowing and philosophically resonant tales in Greek mythology, embodying the inexorable force of fate, the fragility of human understanding, and the tragic consequences of attempting to escape destiny. Born to King Laius and Queen Jocasta of Thebes, Oedipus's life was marked from its earliest moments by prophecy, a declaration from the oracle of Delphi that he would grow to kill his father and marry his mother. This chilling foretelling sets the stage for a narrative steeped in tension, moral ambiguity, and the profound exploration of human agency versus divine will. In the ancient Greek worldview, the power of prophecy was absolute, and attempts to circumvent it were often doomed to failure. Laius, attempting to thwart the oracle's prediction, orders the infant Oedipus to be abandoned on a mountainside, his feet pierced and bound to prevent his survival. Yet fate, as is often the case in Greek myth, intervenes through chance and circumstance. Oedipus is rescued by a compassionate shepherd, eventually adopted by the royal family of Corinth. This sequence of events underscores a recurring theme in Greek tragedy: the tension between human action and divine orchestration. Despite the precautions taken by mortal rulers, the threads of fate remain unbroken, weaving a narrative that is as inevitable as it is devastating. Oedipus grows unaware of his true parentage, yet the shadow of prophecy looms over him. His journey to adulthood is marked by courage, intelligence, and a sense of justice, characteristics that would later define his role as king of Thebes. Along the way, he encounters an old man at a crossroads and, through a violent altercation, kills him. Unbeknownst to him, this man is his biological father, Laius. The tragic irony of this event exemplifies the Greek understanding of dramatic irony, where the audience possesses knowledge that the characters themselves lack, heightening the emotional impact and philosophical complexity of the narrative. Upon reaching Thebes, Oedipus confronts a city terrorized by the Sphinx, a monstrous creature whose riddles have left the populace paralyzed with fear. His successful solution of the Sphinx's riddle not only liberates the city, but also cements his reputation as a hero and a man of exceptional intellect. This act of heroism, however, ironically paves the way for the fulfillment of the prophecy. By solving the riddle, Oedipus gains the hand of Queen Jocasta, his biological mother, and ascends to the throne, unknowingly walking the path that fate has long dictated. The narrative of Oedipus is suffused with themes of sight and insight, knowledge and ignorance, and the limits of human understanding. Despite his intelligence and determination, Oedipus is blind to the reality of his own circumstances, illustrating a central motif in Greek tragedy. The disparity between perception and truth, his relentless pursuit of knowledge and justice, while noble, ultimately exposes the painful reality of his origins, highlighting the tragic intersection of human curiosity and the inexorability of destiny. The revelation of Oedipus's actions, killing his father and marrying his mother, ushers in a catastrophic unraveling of family and city. Jocasta, upon realizing the truth, takes her own life, a stark testament to the emotional weight and moral complexity of the narrative. Oedipus, confronted with the horror of his deeds and the fulfillment of the prophecy, blinds himself, a symbolic act reflecting both physical and psychological recognition of truth. The self-inflicted blindness signifies the limits of human knowledge and the profound consequences of attempting to subvert destiny, encapsulating the tragic essence of his story. Oedipus's exile from Thebes further reinforces the Greek preoccupation with fate, justice, and moral order. Even in his suffering, he maintains a sense of responsibility, acknowledging the catastrophic outcomes of actions that were, paradoxically, both inevitable and morally fraught. The narrative explores the tension between divine will and human choice, illustrating that heroism and virtue are often inseparable from suffering and loss in the classical worldview. Oedipus becomes a symbol not only of human resilience, but also of the profound ethical and emotional dilemmas posed by the knowledge of one's own limitations. The tragedy of Oedipus also serves as a broader reflection on the nature of human existence and the role of fate in shaping lives. Greek audiences, deeply attuned to the power of oracles, divine will, and the cyclical patterns of destiny, would have understood his story as a cautionary tale about the hubris of attempting to escape preordained outcomes. The moral complexity embedded in Oedipus's journey challenges simplistic notions of guilt and innocence, highlighting the interplay between personal responsibility and forces beyond mortal control. Oedipus's story is interwoven with broader themes of civic responsibility and leadership. His actions, though personally tragic, have profound consequences for the city of Thebes. The plague that afflicts Thebes during his reign, as revealed by the oracle, mirrors the moral and cosmic disorder created by the unrecognized fulfillment of prophecy. Greek mythology frequently links personal and communal fate, reflecting a worldview in which the well-being of society is intricately connected to the moral and ethical conduct of its leaders. Oedipus's experience demonstrates how private tragedy can ripple outward, affecting communities and illustrating the deep interconnectedness of human and civic life. The enduring legacy of Oedipus extends beyond the immediate narrative of Thebes. His story influenced countless works of Greek tragedy, including the plays of Sophocles, which emphasize the dramatic interplay of fate, character, and moral consequence. The figure of Oedipus resonates as a profound exploration of human vulnerability, intellectual ambition, and the inexorable power of destiny. Themes introduced in his narrative: tragedy, moral ambiguity, the tension between knowledge and ignorance, continue to captivate audiences and scholars, reflecting the timeless relevance of Greek mythology in exploring fundamental questions about human life and ethics. Oedipus's tale also offers insight into the psychological and existential dimensions of myth. His struggle with identity, knowledge, and moral responsibility prefigures later explorations of human consciousness and the tragic awareness of one's limitations. The story invites reflection on the human condition, the tension between freedom and constraint, and the enduring challenge of navigating a world in which forces beyond comprehension shape outcomes. The interplay of prophecy, personal action, and unforeseen consequence underscores the profound complexity of human experience as envisioned in Greek myth. The tragedy of Oedipus embodies the essence of Greek storytelling, a synthesis of human drama, divine influence, ethical inquiry, and narrative suspense. It demonstrates the profound consequences of attempting to evade fate, the limits of human understanding, and the inescapable interplay between personal choice and cosmic design. Oedipus emerges as both a cautionary figure and a deeply sympathetic character, whose journey illuminates the enduring tension between human ambition and the immutable patterns of destiny. His story, rich in moral, psychological, and philosophical significance, remains one of the most compelling and resonant narratives in Greek mythology, offering lessons about resilience, humility, and the complexities of the human spirit. Chapter 17. Sacred Rites, Oracles, Mysteries, and Rituals. In ancient Greece, religious practice was not merely a facet of life. It was the very pulse of civilization, a force that intertwined myth, politics, and personal destiny. The lines between ritual, prophecy, and legend were often blurred, creating a world where mortals and gods seemed to converse in whispers and omens. Sacred rites, oracles, and secret mysteries were not just acts of devotion. They were the invisible threads that held society together, guiding decisions from the halls of kings to the hearths of humble villagers. Among the most revered institutions of divine counsel were the oracles. The Delphi oracle, home to the god Apollo, stood as a beacon of insight and fear. Here, the Pythia, a priestess shrouded in ritual and obscurity, delivered prophecies that could alter the course of entire city-states. Her words, often enigmatic and layered in metaphor, were received with a mixture of awe and dread. Leaders consulted the oracle before battles, senators sought guidance for legislation, and ordinary citizens approached in hopes of glimpsing their personal fates. The sacred chamber itself, with its fissures exhaling mysterious vapors, the chants of attendants, and the weighty silence of waiting supplicants, created an atmosphere simultaneously mystical and terrifying. One could almost feel the boundaries of reality dissolve, leaving only the trembling presence of the divine. The influence of these oracles extended far beyond personal or political matters. The pronouncements of Delphi could dictate the rise and fall of leaders, incite wars, or forestall disasters. In some accounts, entire colonies were founded or abandoned, based solely on the cryptic guidance of a voice lifted by unseen forces. The ambiguity of prophecy, its deliberate shrouding in metaphor, became a mirror reflecting both human hope and fear. Every consultation was a high-stakes gamble, a delicate negotiation between mortal ambition and divine will. Parallel to the oracular tradition were the secretive and profound mystery cults, which offered a deeply intimate, transformative experience. The Eleusinian mysteries, perhaps the most celebrated of these rites, centered on Demeter and Persephone, embodying the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. Initiates were drawn into a world hidden from the uninitiated, where symbolic acts, sacred words, and ritual enactments communicated truths too powerful for ordinary speech. The ceremonies, conducted within the sanctum of Eleusis, involved a progression from purification to revelation. Participants experienced a journey that blurred the line between the earthly and the divine, the living and the dead, immersing them in an ecstatic understanding of the universe's eternal rhythms. Other mystery rites, such as those of Dionysus, the Bacchic rituals, celebrated both ecstasy and terror. Followers surrendered to frenzied dances, intoxicating wines, and the shattering of societal constraints. These rituals, while appearing chaotic to outsiders, were underpinned by a complex theology: the dissolution of the self, the encounter with divine madness, and the transcendence of mortal limitations. They were a stark reminder that the divine was not always comforting. It was raw, untamed, and capable of both joy and terror. Beyond mysteries and oracles, public festivals reinforced the sacred order through spectacle. Panathenaic games, thesmophoria, and various city-state celebrations combined athleticism, theatrical performance, and sacrificial offerings. Even seemingly secular contests were imbued with religious significance, acknowledging the gods' omnipresence in every aspect of life. Victory, honor, and recognition were not merely social rewards. They were interpreted as signs of divine favor. Every ritual act, from the simplest libation to the grandest procession, carried an undercurrent of cosmic meaning. The tools and symbols of these rites were equally evocative. Sacred objects, statues, masks, and ritual implements acted as conduits between mortal and immortal. They were meticulously crafted, often adorned with inscriptions and imagery to focus the participants' minds on the spiritual truths being enacted. The presence of these objects transformed ordinary spaces into liminal realms, where the ordinary rules of existence were suspended, and one could sense the weight of the divine. Initiation into these mysteries demanded courage and discipline. The Eleusinian rites, for instance, involved fasting, purification, and the endurance of silence. The reward, however, was profound: a vision of cosmic order, a promise of a blessed afterlife, and the transformative experience of direct communion with the divine. Yet the knowledge remained carefully guarded. Revelation to the uninitiated was forbidden, punishable by severe sanctions, for the mysteries were considered too potent to be trivialized. This secrecy added layers of awe, fear, and longing, making the rituals themselves a living narrative of the sacred. Even the everyday actions of the Greeks were suffused with ritual significance. Birth, marriage, and death were not merely social events, but thresholds laden with divine attention. Rituals at the birth of a child invoked protection from the gods. Weddings enacted cosmic harmony and societal cohesion. Funerals honored both the departed and the unseen forces guiding the soul's journey. Each gesture, each offering, each word of prayer was an acknowledgement that life itself was a theatre of the sacred, constantly observed and subtly influenced by powers beyond comprehension. In the shadows of these rites, however, lay the darker aspects of human engagement with the divine. Superstition, fear, and exploitation often intertwined with devotion. The promise of prophetic insight could be manipulated. The ecstasy of Dionysian rites could spill into lawlessness, and the secrecy of mysteries could mask political maneuvering. The sacred and the profane were never truly separate. They coexisted in a tension that defined Greek religiosity. To walk the path of initiation or seek the counsel of an oracle was to navigate not only spiritual realms, but also the complexities of human desire, ambition, and fear. Thus, the sacred rites of ancient Greece were more than ceremonies. They were a reflection of the human condition itself. Our search for understanding, our confrontation with mortality, our longing for connection with forces larger than ourselves. In the echoes of chants, the flicker of torchlight on stone altars, and the whispered words of the Pythia, one can still sense the profound intimacy and terror of a world where the divine walked among mortals, shaping destinies, testing courage, and revealing the hidden threads of existence. To witness these rituals, even through the lens of history, is to glimpse the heartbeat of ancient Greece, a civilization both rational and mystical, public and secretive, joyous and terrifying. Sacred rites, oracles, and mysteries were not just relics of a bygone era. They were the expressions of a culture striving to understand the ineffable, to touch the divine, and to find meaning in the fragile, fleeting life of mortals. The stories, the symbols, and the experiences have survived in fragments, yet they speak with a clarity that transcends time, inviting us to step into the shadowy corridors of sacred knowledge, to feel the awe and fear of those who once dared to seek the gods face to face. Chapter 18. From Greece to Rome, the transformation of myth. As the Mediterranean world shifted from the fragmented city-states of Greece to the expanding power of Rome, the stories of gods and heroes did not vanish. They transformed, adapting to a new political and cultural landscape. Greek myths, rich with the tales of Olympus, labyrinthine quests, and divine intervention, found themselves reinterpreted, repurposed, and sometimes sanitized for Roman sensibilities. This process was not mere translation. It was a profound cultural metamorphosis, revealing how myth can evolve alongside human societies while retaining its emotional and spiritual power. The Roman embrace of Greek mythology began with conquest and admiration. Romans were pragmatists, valuing what worked in governance and culture, yet they were captivated by the sophistication, drama, and poetry of Greek stories. Gods were renamed and recharacterized. Zeus became Jupiter, Hera became Juno, Poseidon became Neptune. But their essential natures were preserved, often with subtle shifts. Jupiter, for instance, inherited Zeus's authority, but gained a distinctly Roman emphasis on law, civic duty, and state control, reflecting the priorities of an empire that valued order above personal caprice. Similarly, Venus absorbed Aphrodite's beauty and sensuality, but was elevated as a symbol of Rome's eternal destiny and imperial ambition. This cultural transmission was far from passive. Roman authors, poets, and historians actively reshaped mythic narratives to serve political, moral, and philosophical purposes. Virgil's Aeneid, for instance, reimagined the wanderings of Aeneas as a divinely sanctioned precursor to Rome itself, linking myth to national identity. Homeric epics became templates, not mere copies, providing structure for Roman storytelling while imbuing it with uniquely Roman virtues, pietas, gravitas, and virtues. Through these texts, myths became tools for shaping collective memory, instructing citizens, and legitimizing rulers. The gods were no longer distant, whimsical figures. They were integral participants in the moral and political order of the empire. Alongside these literary transformations, ritual practice also adapted. Roman religion was inherently pragmatic, focused on augury, omens, and civic rites, yet it incorporated the rich symbolic tapestry of Greek myth. Temples once dedicated to Greek deities were rededicated with new names and interpretations, while festivals celebrated the stories in ways that reinforced Roman ideals. The Greek emphasis on dramatic narratives and personal heroism merged with Roman civic consciousness, creating a religious and cultural hybrid that was both familiar and innovatively Roman. Rituals, sacrifices, and offerings continued to honor divine powers, but they were now framed within the context of empire, destiny, and social cohesion. This period of transformation also affected the popular imagination. Myths were no longer confined to elite poets or priests. They permeated public life through statues, coins, mosaics, and frescoes. Children learned tales of gods and heroes as part of their moral and cultural education. Stories of Heracles, Perseus, and Theseus were retold in ways that emphasized loyalty, courage, and strategic intelligence, virtues that mirrored Roman expectations of citizens and soldiers. The fusion of Greek narrative artistry with Roman pragmatism produced a mythology that was expansive, adaptable, and enduring. Yet, the Roman reinterpretation was not purely celebratory. Some elements of Greek myth that conflicted with Roman ideals were modified or minimized. Tales emphasizing divine caprice, erotic scandal, or unchecked chaos were reshaped to fit a societal framework that prized duty, hierarchy, and civic responsibility. Even the terrifying aspects of the gods, the capricious punishments, the vengeance, the unpredictable interventions, were reframed as moral lessons or allegories, reinforcing social norms and political obedience. The gods became not only figures of fear and fascination, but also instruments of moral and civic instruction. The transformation also extended to hero cults and legendary narratives. Heracles was venerated not just as a divine strongman, but as a paragon of perseverance and public service, often depicted in Roman art performing feats that aligned with Roman virtues. Similarly, the myths of Perseus, Theseus, and the Trojan War were recast, emphasizing loyalty, strategy, and the consequences of moral failure. Heroes were no longer isolated figures of fantastical exploits. They became exemplars whose stories illuminated civic values, leadership principles, and the consequences of human action. This period highlights the malleability of myth. Greek tales of divine quarrels, cosmic justice, and human ambition were transformed in response to a new cultural, political, and social environment. The underlying narrative structures remained, but their emphasis shifted. Morality became intertwined with civic duty. Heroism was linked to strategy and service, and divine intervention served to reinforce societal order. The Romans preserved the drama and imagination of Greek mythology while embedding it in the practical concerns of empire, creating a mythology that was both aesthetically rich and functionally integrated into public life. Art and architecture reflected this evolution as well. Temples, statues, and frescoes combined Greek aesthetic principles with Roman grandeur, portraying gods and heroes in ways that emphasized authority, civic importance, and imperial vision. The visual culture reinforced the narratives circulating in literature and ritual, creating a comprehensive environment where myth, art, and statecraft intertwined. Citizens were constantly reminded of their cultural inheritance, the divine sanction of their leaders, and the moral lessons embedded in heroic exploits. Moreover, the Roman adaptation of Greek mythology facilitated the integration of conquered peoples. By honoring Greek traditions while embedding them within Roman civic identity, the empire encouraged loyalty, cultural cohesion, and shared religious practice. Greek myths became a universal language of values, aspiration, and divine influence, one that transcended local customs while still allowing regional expression. This fusion created a resilient cultural legacy, one that could be transmitted across centuries and geographies, shaping European thought long after the fall of Rome. In essence, the transformation of Greek myth into the Roman context illustrates the enduring power of storytelling. Myths are not static. They evolve with societies, reflecting changing priorities, values, and worldviews. The Roman reinterpretation preserved the imagination, the moral dilemmas, and the awe-inspiring visions of Greek mythology, while aligning them with the needs of a growing, complex, and administratively sophisticated empire. It is a testament to the adaptability of myth that these stories, born in the fragmented polis of Greece, could flourish and resonate within the vast, structured reality of Rome. Through literature, ritual, art, and popular culture, Greek mythology was reborn in Roman form, its gods, heroes, and monsters recast in ways that were at once familiar and transformative. The echoes of these adaptations would reverberate through centuries, influencing the Renaissance, modern literature, and even contemporary popular culture. In the transformation from Greece to Rome, myth demonstrates its unparalleled capacity to bridge time, space, and civilization, carrying with it the dreams, fears, and aspirations of humanity across generations. Chapter 19: Gods, Archetypes, and Psychology. Why myths still matter. Greek mythology is not merely a collection of fantastical stories from a distant past. It is a mirror reflecting the depths of human consciousness, behavior, and cultural evolution. Across millennia, these tales of gods, heroes, and monsters have served as archetypal patterns, guiding human understanding of morality, ambition, fear, and desire. The stories of Zeus's authority, Athena's wisdom, or Hades's underworld journey continue to resonate because they embody universal themes that transcend time and geography. In exploring these myths, we uncover not only the imaginative brilliance of ancient Greece, but also profound insights into the human psyche. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, recognized the enduring power of these archetypes. He observed that myths encapsulate patterns of behavior, inner conflicts, and symbolic truths that recur across cultures. In Greek mythology, the hero's journey, exemplified by figures like Heracles, Perseus, and Odysseus, illustrates the struggle between personal ambition, societal expectations, and moral responsibility. These narratives serve as psychological templates, offering lessons on courage, resilience, and the consequences of hubris. Even the capricious gods, in their moments of wrath or favor, reflect human emotions magnified to divine proportions, allowing audiences to confront fears and desires safely within the realm of story. The gods themselves operate as archetypes, representing universal aspects of human experience. Zeus embodies authority, leadership, and the burden of power. Hera represents marital fidelity, jealousy, and protective devotion. Athena symbolizes wisdom, strategy, and rational thought. Dionysus embodies ecstasy, chaos, and the tension between order and instinct. By personifying these qualities, myths create a symbolic language through which humans can interpret complex social and emotional realities. The divine drama externalizes internal conflicts, making abstract concepts tangible and relatable. Moreover, myths address existential questions that remain relevant. Hades's underworld, for instance, confronts the inevitability of death and the mysteries of what lies beyond life. The labors of Heracles and the trials of other heroes explore the limits of human endurance, the consequences of ambition, and the possibility of redemption. Myths do not merely entertain. They guide ethical reflection, emotional understanding, and personal development. By engaging with these stories, humans navigate their own moral and psychological landscapes, using the narrative as both compass and cautionary tale. Greek mythology also informs collective cultural identity. In ancient Greece, shared stories of gods and heroes fostered social cohesion, moral education, and political legitimacy. These narratives provided citizens with common reference points for understanding justice, courage, and communal responsibility. Today, the enduring fascination with Greek myths reflects their capacity to speak to universal human experiences: fear, love, ambition, tragedy, and triumph. Their persistence in literature, art, cinema, and psychology demonstrates the timeless relevance of these ancient tales. In literature, modern authors and storytellers draw heavily on Greek myth to explore contemporary themes. The archetypal hero, the trickster, the wise mentor, and the tragic victim populate narratives that resonate across cultures and eras. By understanding the original myths, one gains insight into the symbolic structure underlying countless stories, from Shakespearean drama to modern fantasy epics. The narrative techniques, character archetypes, and moral dilemmas devised by the Greeks provide a foundation for storytelling that continues to shape how humans communicate and understand their world. Psychologically, myths offer a form of symbolic therapy. Engaging with stories of divine conflict, heroic struggle, and moral complexity allows individuals to process emotions, confront fears, and explore potential courses of action in a symbolic, safe space. The narratives serve as mirrors reflecting human nature, revealing strengths and weaknesses, desires and aversions, hopes and anxieties. By internalizing these patterns, audiences gain tools for self-reflection, decision-making, and personal growth. The stories become more than entertainment. They are instruments of introspection. Greek myths also illuminate societal and cultural dynamics. The interactions between gods and humans, heroes and monsters, reflect issues of power, justice, and human agency. The narratives explore the tension between individual desire and communal responsibility, the consequences of transgression, and the role of fate in shaping human destiny. These stories function as both mirrors and guides, offering insights into human behavior and the social structures that emerge from it. They allow audiences to explore complex moral landscapes, balancing ambition, ethics, and societal norms. In contemporary psychology, the study of myths informs understanding of personality, motivation, and human development. Archetypal analysis reveals patterns that recur across cultures, highlighting the shared psychological frameworks underlying human behavior. The enduring popularity of Greek mythology suggests that these archetypes resonate deeply with innate human tendencies, shaping perception, aspiration, and emotion. Through myths, humans confront universal questions. Who am I? What is my role in society? How should I navigate love, power, and mortality? These narratives offer guidance, framing life's challenges in symbolic, memorable form. Artistic representation further reinforces the psychological and cultural significance of these myths. Sculpture, painting, theatre, and cinema visualize the archetypes, amplifying their emotional and symbolic impact. From classical statues of Athena or Zeus to modern reinterpretations in film and literature, the gods and heroes serve as enduring symbols of human potential and frailty. Their stories are retold not only to preserve cultural memory, but to inspire reflection, creativity, and emotional engagement. Ultimately, the continued relevance of Greek mythology lies in its adaptability and universality. While rooted in a specific historical and cultural context, the themes of these stories — conflict, ambition, love, fear, transformation — transcend time and place. They resonate because they mirror the human condition, offering insight into the forces that shape individuals and societies. By engaging with these myths, we access a language of symbols and archetypes that facilitates understanding of both personal experience and collective history. Greek mythology endures not merely as a collection of ancient stories, but as a profound psychological and cultural resource. The gods, heroes, and monsters of these narratives embody archetypes that illuminate human nature, morality, and social dynamics. Their stories provide a symbolic framework through which we can explore ambition, fear, love, and consequence. By studying and retelling these myths, we not only preserve cultural heritage, but also engage in a timeless dialogue with the human psyche, discovering truths that remain as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. In this sense, the myths of Greece continue to matter. They are not relics of the past, but living instruments of insight, reflection, and inspiration. Conclusion: the locked door of myth. What we inherit today. As we reach the conclusion of this expansive journey through Greek mythology, it is worth pausing to reflect on the lasting impact of these stories. From the creation myths that explain the origins of the cosmos to the complex narratives of gods, heroes, and monsters, Greek mythology provides a rich tapestry of human imagination, ethical inquiry, and cultural expression. The locked door of myth is not simply a relic of the past. It is a gateway into understanding ourselves, our societies, and the timeless questions that have intrigued humanity for millennia. Myths serve as vessels of cultural memory, preserving the collective experiences, fears, and aspirations of ancient civilizations. Through the triumphs and tragedies of Zeus, Athena, Heracles, Odysseus, and countless others, we gain insight into the values and concerns of ancient Greeks. These narratives encode lessons on morality, power, resilience, and ambition, offering guidance in a symbolic language that resonates across generations. In many ways, the myths act as mirrors, reflecting both the world of their origin and the enduring human condition. The metaphor of the locked door emphasizes the tension between mystery and revelation inherent in myth. Myths are not meant to be fully solved or explained. Their power lies in their ambiguity and layered meanings. Each story contains multiple interpretations, allowing listeners and readers to explore psychological, ethical, and social dimensions simultaneously. For example, the tale of Prometheus gifting fire to humanity speaks to innovation, defiance, and the consequences of hubris, while the saga of Oedipus interrogates fate, free will, and moral responsibility. By engaging with these narratives, we open ourselves to the lessons embedded within the stories, even if we cannot fully unlock every secret. One of the most compelling aspects of Greek mythology is its capacity to connect individual experience with universal themes. Heroes confront challenges that echo our own struggles: the tension between desire and duty, the pursuit of glory, the inevitability of suffering, and the search for meaning in a complex world. The gods embody extremes of emotion and behavior, allowing us to examine human traits in exaggerated symbolic form. By witnessing divine jealousy, anger, love, or mercy, we confront our own capacities for these emotions in a safe and reflective context. Culturally, the inheritance of Greek mythology is profound. These myths have shaped literature, philosophy, art, and even modern psychology. From Homer and Hesiod to Shakespeare, James Joyce, and modern fantasy authors, the influence of Greek archetypes is evident. Artists and storytellers continue to draw on these symbols to explore contemporary issues, demonstrating the enduring relevance of the themes embedded in the ancient tales. Greek mythology provides a framework through which humanity can explore morality, creativity, identity, and the consequences of action across time and space. Psychologically, the myths serve as tools for introspection and self-understanding. Figures such as Heracles, Perseus, and Medea illustrate the complexity of human motivation, the consequences of choices, and the struggle to reconcile personal desire with social expectations. Archetypal analysis as proposed by Jung and other psychologists, reveals that these narratives encode patterns of human behavior that recur across cultures. The stories allow us to explore our fears, hopes, and aspirations symbolically, providing insight into both personal and collective psychology. Engaging with myth is not merely an intellectual exercise. It is a form of active reflection on the human experience. The locked door also reminds us of the limitations of interpretation. While scholars, artists, and enthusiasts can study the text, analyze symbols, and theorize about origins, there remains an element of mystery. The ancient Greeks did not conceive these stories as rigid doctrines, but as living narratives, adaptable to context and audience. Each retelling offers new layers of meaning, shaped by the interpreter's culture, experiences, and insights. In this sense, myths are dynamic, evolving tools for understanding rather than static relics. Furthermore, Greek mythology has a pedagogical dimension that transcends history. It teaches empathy, ethical reasoning, and critical thinking. By examining the choices of gods and mortals, we learn to anticipate consequences, understand complex motivations, and appreciate the nuances of moral dilemmas. These lessons remain relevant today, informing education, literature, psychology, and even popular culture. Myths provide a timeless vocabulary for discussing what it means to be human, bridging the gap between ancient society and modern life. Our inheritance of Greek mythology is not merely intellectual, but also imaginative. The vivid imagery, dramatic conflicts, and emotional intensity of these stories inspire creativity in countless forms. From visual art to theatre, literature, and film, the myths stimulate human imagination, encouraging exploration of new ideas and reinterpretation of old themes. The archetypal patterns, heroic journeys, tragic flaws, divine intervention, continue to structure narratives, proving that the psychological and aesthetic principles embedded in Greek myth remain foundational to storytelling. In contemplating the legacy of Greek mythology, we recognize its dual nature. It is both specific to a historical culture and universal in its insight. The myths are tied to ancient Greek society, reflecting its cosmology, politics, and social norms. Yet their themes, power, justice, love, vengeance, and the human confrontation with the unknown, are timeless. They continue to inform our understanding of human nature, guiding moral reflection, inspiring artistic creation, and providing a framework for exploring the mysteries of life. Ultimately, the locked door of myth invites us into an ongoing conversation. We inherit these stories not as finished products, but as living dialogues, capable of teaching, challenging, and inspiring. Each reader or listener becomes a participant, unlocking insights, discovering new interpretations, and contributing to the evolving life of the myth. By engaging with Greek mythology, we connect with the collective imagination of humanity across millennia, gaining access to the wisdom, creativity, and emotional resonance encoded in these timeless tales. The study and appreciation of Greek mythology offer profound rewards. These stories are far more than ancient entertainment. They are vessels of psychological insight, ethical reflection, and cultural memory. The archetypes of gods, heroes, and monsters illuminate human behavior and societal dynamics, providing enduring lessons on morality, resilience, and creativity. The locked door reminds us that while some mysteries remain inaccessible, the act of exploration itself enriches our understanding. Through myths, we inherit not only the narratives of the past, but a toolkit for interpreting the present and envisioning the future. Greek mythology remains alive, inviting each generation to open the door and explore the depth, complexity, and beauty of human imagination. As always, thank you for joining us on this journey through the myths of ancient Greece. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. What story, god, or hero captured your imagination most? And how does it resonate with your own experience in today's world?